watchdogs say the world's richest man, Elon Musk, has declared war on Social Security. Tell us about this.
The interesting thing, though, is just how, like, ridiculous it is, because it's now you have literally the richest man in the world sitting on a commission that's supposed to find trillions of dollars in savings. And, you know, they're pretending like, oh, well, that's this $50 million program that somebody's doing that's, you know, stupid on its face. And you're like, no. When you're talking about trillions of dollars, when it has a T in it, what they're doing is they're going to come and rob you of your Social Security benefits. That's where the money is. That's what they always do. They come after your Social Security and your Medicare. So what happened to start this latest one is Senator Mike Lee and this backbencher in the House, you know, in a pretty coordinated way, started talking about how Social Security is bad and we need to turn it over to Wall Street. We need to wholesale get rid of it. The senator's thread was like 40 tweets of just wrong information long. The House was an interview, but it's the same thing. They're saying, hey, now that, you know, we're actually getting this done, it's time for everyone to realize that we're talking about cutting Social Security. And on Twitter, you know, the thing that really started the news cycle is Elon Musk did one of his interesting tweets. Mm-hmm. So he is a long held believer in the fact that Social Security is bankrupting the country, that we can't afford Social Security. This is Elon Musk himself. So it's no surprise that that's where they're going. But, you know, I have to deal with people who aren't you, Tom. You know, the media is like, oh, out of left field, or where did this come from? Or Donald Trump promised he wasn't going to cut Social Security benefits. And I'm like, they've only got one play. As soon as we really just make peace with that, it's pretty obvious that this is what they're going to do every single time. And what's also obvious, Tom, is that the next unfortunate phase is you're going to have a bunch of credulous Democrats who are going to be like, hey, maybe I should get on this commission to have a good guy's voice on the commission because maybe there's good things. No, unless he pledges in writing, I will not cut 1 penny of Social Security benefits, 1 penny of Medicare or Medicaid benefits, then this commission is nothing more than an attack on our earned benefits.
Yeah, and you know what they're going to do with regard to the Democrats. They're going to go to the Problem Solvers Caucus, you know, the Democrats who have their hand out for whoever gives them the most money. And, you know, the banks will start showering cash on them, and they'll start going, well, maybe we should have a Medicare Advantage kind of version of Social Security Advantage. Wouldn't that be a good idea? You know, people could put their money in the stock market and make more money than they do in Social Security. And a lot of young people will go, oh, really? What do you think?
Exactly. And maybe even all they've done is shorten that path, because it's literally the richest man in the world is chairing the commission, Tom. So when they put their hands out, it's Elon Musk who drops the bag of cash in it. You know, like he bought Twitter for $44 billion, lost 80% of its value, but he bought an election and he owns you know, some significant portion of the government, which is reflected in a $100 billion increase in his personal wealth. So this is like a no-brainer for these billionaires. But again, at the end of the day, they know they need to take their money from somewhere. And that somewhere is our pockets. It's our Social Security. That's what they're.
In the wake of the killing this morning in New York of the CEO of United Healthcare, they're the largest provider of Medicare Advantage programs in the United States. You know, we have no idea who this guy was, or you know, whether he's, you know, upset about something that involved you know, personal stuff, or whether it had to do with professional, you know, who knows. But it kind of lifts the question of Medicare Advantage, I think, up a little bit. Where are we at? How much longer is this open enrollment period? I'm thinking I need to publish another one of my Look Out for Medicare Advantage op-eds. It's been a while. I think it's been a year since I've done it. And
I think publish that soon, Tom, because it's days left in open enrollment. I think the murder of an individual CEO or otherwise, we don't know anything about that. Right. What actually is the case there. But United Health, no matter what, this is the biggest player in privatizing Medicare and privatized Medicare in the insurance market outside of Medicare. The biggest benefactor from this enormous push that is going to happen, and it's going to be hard to fight against, Tom, under the Trump administration. If Dr. Oz gets confirmed, he's got one goal, and he's not a clown, like many of the other nominees. Dr. Oz is much more of a cold-blooded health insurance corporate executive, and they're pushing to privatize Medicare, and United Health will gain enormous amounts. They'll be by far and away the biggest winner from that, and obviously the biggest loser is the American people. So Medicare Advantage is going to be To
what extent can that be done by executive action? I'm assuming Medicare Advantage, the default when you sign up, is not something that requires congressional action. That can be done simply by executive action.
Yeah, the really unfortunate thing, Tom, is that an enormous amount of this stuff, when it comes to privatizing Medicare, can be done through executive action. And the first Trump administration, they didn't know a lot of that up front, but they were educated by the corporations, really quickly on it. And so by the end, they'd had their thumb on the scale quite vigorously. And
in addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com. Welcome to the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Settlers, The Mythology of the White Proletariat, The True Story of the White Nation by Jay Sakai, published by Morningstar Press in 1989. This is from Chapter 2, The Foundations of Settler Life. The life of European settlers of their society was abnormal because it was dependent upon a foundation of conquest, genocide, and enslavement. The myth of the self-sufficient white settler family clearing the wilderness and supporting themselves through their own initiative and hard labor is a propaganda fabrication. It is the absolute characteristic of settler society to be parasitic, dependent upon the super-exploitation of oppressed peoples for its style of life. Never has Euro-American society completely supported itself. This is the decisive factor in the consciousness of all classes and strata of white society from 1600 to now. Settler society was raised up above the level of backward old Europe by a foundation of conquest. This conquest was a miracle drug for a Europe convulsed with the reaction of decaying feudalism and deadly capitalism. Shot into the veins of the Spanish feudal nation, for instance, the miracle drug of the New World conquest gave Spain the momentary power to overrun North Africa, Holland, and Italy before her historical incident waned. Like many such fixes for Euro-Americans, this conquest was addicting. It was habit-forming and rapidly indispensable, not only culturally, but in the mechanism of an oppressor society whose lifeblood was new conquest. We'll examine this later in the relationship of settlerism to imperialism. For now, it's enough to see that this conquest is a material act of great magnitude, an economic and social event as important as the emergence of the factory system or the exploitation of petroleum in the Middle East. We stress the obvious here because the Euro-American settlers have always made light of their invasion and occupation, although the conquered territory is the precondition for their whole society. Traditionally, European settler societies throw off the propaganda smoke screens that they didn't really conquer and dispossess other nations. They claim with false modesty that vacant territory. So the early English settlers depicted America as empty, a howling wilderness, unsettled, sparsely populated, just waiting with a vacant sign on the door for the first lucky civilization to walk in and claim it. Theodore Roosevelt wrote defensively in 1900, quote, "The settler and pioneer have at bottom had justice on their side. This great continent could not have been kept as nothing but a game preserve for squalid savages," end of quote. It is telling that this lie is precisely the same lie put forward by white Afrikaner settlers. South Africa was literally totally uninhabited by any Africans when they arrived from Europe. To universal derision, these European settlers claim to be the only rightful historic inhabitants of South Africa. Or we can hear similar defenses put forward by the European settlers of Israel, who claim that much of the Palestinian land and buildings they occupy are rightfully theirs, since the Arabs had allegedly decided to voluntarily abandon it all during the 1948-49 war. Are these kinds of tales any less preposterous than those put forward by Euro-American settlers? America was spacious and sparsely populated only because the European invaders destroyed whole civilizations and killed off millions of Native Americans to get the land and profits they wanted. We all know that when the English arrived at Virginia, for example, they encountered an urban, village-dwelling society far more skilled than they were in the arts of medicine, agriculture, fishing, and government. This civilization was reflected in a chain of 300 Indian nations and peoples stretching from the Arctic Circle to the tip of South America, many of whom had highly developed societies. There was, in fact, a greater population in these Indian nations in 1492 than in all of Western Europe. Recent scholarly estimates indicate that at the time of Columbus, there were 100 million Indians in the hemisphere, 10 million in North America, 25 million in Central Mexico, and an additional 65 million elsewhere in Central and South America. These numbers have long been concealed since they give rise to the logical question of what happened to this great mass of people. The European invaders, Spanish, Dutch, English, Portuguese, and French, simply killed off millions and millions to safeguard their conquest of the land and provide the disposable slave labor they needed to launch their new world. Conservative Western historical estimates show that the Spanish reduced, in quotes, the Indian population of their colonies from some 50 million to only 4 million by the end of the 17th century. And from the 10 million Indians who once inhabited North America, after 4 centuries of settler invasion and rule, there were in 1900 perhaps 200,000 to 300,000 surviving descendants in the United States. This was the very substantial down payment towards the continuing blood price that third world nations have to pay to sustain the Euro-American way of life. So when we hear that the settlers pushed out the Indians or forced the Indians to leave their traditional hunting grounds, we know that these are just code phrases to refer politely to the most barbaric genocide imaginable. It could well be the greatest crime in all of human history. Only here, the Adolf Eichmanns and Heinrich Himmlers had names like Benjamin Franklin and Andrew Jackson. The point is that genocide was not an accident, not an excess, not the unintended side effect of virile European growth. Genocide was the necessary and deliberate act of the capitalists and their settler shock troops.
Hey, happy, what is it, Wednesday? Thursday? We've got
book
a lot to
settlers.
talk about today. A lot going on. In the second hour of the program, by the way, we're going to have, kind of an interesting time. Congressman Mark Pocan will be with us for the hour, taking your calls. I want to start out with the fatal flaw, believing that you can negotiate with evil without becoming its victim. We'll get to that in just a second. Also, what Republicans specifically are planning to cut to pay for the tax breaks for Elon and Donald, and Putin's trolls have a new message for Americans. I'll tell you all about that. As I mentioned, the second hour will be Congressman Mark Pocan. Our third hour, how doctors are pushing Medicare credit cards, 26% interest credit cards on patients, and apparently being paid to do so. We have turning our physicians into predators. Surprise, surprise, right? Also, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, just came out with a report on how big pharmaceutical middlemen are cashing in on your misery. This is shocking. And in the third hour of our program, and also a federal judge in Texas has blocked the U.S. Food and Drug Administration from enforcing a requirement that cigarette packages and advertisements contain graphic warnings. Republicans, Republican toadies. The guy, of course, is a Trump appointee, doing the business of big business. It's in the third hour of the program. But I want to get into this whole thing of basically evil. The Oxford Dictionary defines evil as a force that causes bad things to happen, which is kind of a nice general explanation. GOP at the Republican Party struggle for a way to not call it evil. This is a party that is now fully in the service of a fossil fuel industry, actively destroying our planet, and knows that they're doing it, and pays people to deny that, or at least has in the past. They are in the service of a for-profit health insurance industry that, according to the British journal The Lancet, 65,000 Americans dying every year unnecessarily because insurance companies denied them preventative or any other form of care. They are completely in the bag for a group of right-wing billionaires who appear committed to replacing American democracy with, as I've shared with you many, many times. I wrote a book about it, The Hidden History of American Oligarchy. The danger of oligarchy is that it is a transitional form of government. It's unstable. When oligarchs take over a government, it's basically a kleptocracy. The people get seriously pissed off, and one of two things happens. Either the country flips back to democracy. This happened here in the United States with the Civil War. It happened here in the United States in the 1890s through the 1900s, 1912, I guess you'd say, the Teddy Roosevelt, William Howard Taft era. And it happened in the wake of the Great Depression with Franklin Roosevelt, taking America back to democracy. So either countries flip back to democracy, as happened at least 3 times here in the United States, or in response to oligarchy, countries flip into tyranny. The Republican Party is fully beholden, 100% of its members, as far as I can tell, to the American gun industry, which is responsible for psychologically scarring an entire generation of children. My grandkids active shooter drills in school where the schools actually pretend that the school is under attack. I mean, we're creating trauma for these children so that this industry can continue. And the Republican Party is not only fine with that, they're enthusiastic about it. How do you not call that evil? For-profit movements to end or privatize public schools and keep college unaffordable. The Republican Party is
totally in bed with an investment industry that is financializing housing, which is causing an explosion in homelessness here in the United States. When my father bought the house that I grew up in, he bought it in 1956 or 57. At that time, the average home in America cost twice the annual paycheck in America. My dad at that time was making around $7,500 a year, working in a tool and die shop, which was a good middle class salary in 1957. And he paid, as I recall, $13,000, might have been 15, pretty sure it was $13,000 for the house that I grew up in. So the house cost about twice what my dad was probably earning the average paycheck at the time. Today, the average paycheck in America is around $40,000 a year. Household income's a little higher because most households have two people working in them. But the average individual pay is around $40 grand a year. And the average cost of a house in America is around $440,000. 10 times as much, not twice as much. And the Republican Party is not just fine with that, they're like in bed with the industry that's causing this problem. And then you got the predators in the banking industry who crashed our entire economy, seized up the economy, freaked everybody out, required trillions of dollars in bailout during the George W. Bush administration. And Bush organized it in such a way that nobody was ever prosecuted. And just to be fair, Obama bears some responsibility for that as well. But, bottom line, the GOP totally in bed with a banking industry that basically crashed America and then walked away with billions. Many of these bankers who actually caused this problem walked away with billion-dollar, multi-hundred million dollar, or certainly multi-million dollar bonuses and paychecks, and still do. And now a few Democrats think that they can compromise with these people. Yeah, let's work things out, like the Lake and Riley Act. I mentioned this briefly yesterday. Michelle Goldberg wrote for the New York Times yesterday about this, talking about how under this law, which, by the way, has a phrase in it, victims of the Biden administration's open border policy. Right, yeah. That should tell you everything you need to know. But this law says that if a child of undocumented immigrants is busted for stealing a candy bar, even if they didn't do it, they will spend the rest of their lives in detention. The rest of their lives, even if they didn't do it, with no due process, no trial. It's essentially a complete suspension of the 5th, 6th, 2nd to the Constitution. And yet you've got John Fetterman and Ruben Gallego saying, yeah, we'll co-sponsor this legislation. You've got a bunch of Democrats in the Senate saying, yeah, we'll vote for it. Really? Shouldn't they have known that if the Republicans are proposing anything that has anything to do with immigration? I mean, it's really hard to read the bill. I read the bill yesterday when I was writing this piece. And the problem with this Lake and Riley Act is they can't really tell what it says, because most of what it says is, amend paragraph 3, section 2 of legislation 301-9. It's written in a way that it's not obvious how bad it is. The bottom line is you can't compromise with evil. I realize there may be some times and some places where Republicans and Democrats can get together and, do things that need to be done. But by and large, look at this. Mike Johnson comes out yesterday after his own state got $1.7 billion in federal aid during Hurricanes Laura, Delta, and Ida. His own state of Louisiana. $1.7 billion. Not a peep from President Biden. And comes out and says, I think there should be conditions. Conditions? Really? We're going to play politics with people? It's just breathtaking. Steve writes, be nice to Trump means being capitulant. When it comes to kneeling in front of the man who Scarborough called Hitler, there's nothing civil about it. In fact, it's as indecent an act as there is. We got to be careful here. Democrats need to be careful. The next 2 years are going to be really, really dangerous.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Democrats need to remember Winston Churchill's sage advice. He said, "You have enemies? Good. That means you stood up for something sometime in your life." And welcome back, Cece in Northbrook, Illinois. Hey, Cece, what's up?
Hi, everything's good. I logged into your meeting this weekend, your monthly meeting for your paid subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting. The second time I logged in, I have a friend who's 85 years old. She's white. I'm black. My best friend, her husband passed. They were a couple, and I love them. And but that conversation you guys had this weekend on the paid subscriber line, it reminded me of her. But I want to remind the older people, white people, to keep faith. I'm a black man. I've grown up in some tough times, and I love their passion. I appreciate it, and I just say keep your faith. We got to not let them steal our joy. And keep doing what they're doing. The same thing I tell my 85-year-old. And so I want to emphasize that, but I want to also comment on somebody called Fonnie Lewis a derogatory name a couple of weeks ago. And I want to push back on that and say Fonnie Lewis is actually a hero.
Oh, yeah.
Alvin Bragg is actually a hero.
Oh, yeah.
And Latisha James is actually a hero. They're not these name calling. It's ridiculous. And also,
well, I would add, CC, please, name one white person who tried to hold these people to account. The only one I can think of is Jack Smith.
Yeah, and he got uncut by Merrick Garland.
Yeah.
So anyway, and also Larry from California. There, he's my man. I'm black. I think he's black. But what he said was right on point. Like, we're looking at this thing totally the wrong way. We got him exactly where we want him. And we need to call them out like they call us out. Hey, well, where's this financial responsibility, our debt? We need to holler, scratch, and scream. And I'm still developing my podcast. I'm almost there, Tom. And I was so impressed with Larry. I would love to have him on my show. We could just go at it. It'll probably just be about an hour. And I want to do it just because, the situation we have today. I mean, our communication, especially black people, and we need to get into this podcast game to communicate, literally. Yeah. I love your show, Tom. I wish I could duplicate what you do. Man, you are so good at communicating, and I strive to do that, and that's what it's going to be called, Black Middle Class Talk. It's already.
Oh, very cool. You launching a podcast, Cece? Is that what you're?
Yes, I'm launching a podcast, doing the same. Pretty much have a line where we can communicate. People can call in. I got the call board set up.
Very cool.
I got my YouTube. Hey, Tom, when I said I was going to do it, I did not know how much work it was going to be. But I'm almost there.
Let me tell you about it.
I'm trying to, and the only reason I'm doing it is a pushback. It's a pushback to what's going on. This narrative of what black people are. The middle class black people are we're just being phased out. Our voices are not there. And hopefully I can get a podcast up to give us this opportunity to express ourselves, such as Larry, because we don't see things in like others. We've been terrorized to the fullest extent of the law.
Well, when you get your podcast up, CC, call back in and give us, feel free to plug it on the show here.
I sure will. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, good talking to you, CC. I wish you the very best. Good luck. Yep. 20 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls and the news of the day in just a moment. Stay with us. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Other countries enjoy benefits like free health care in college, modern mass transit, affordable housing, food, and drugs.
They also have internet and phone service without companies listening and selling their information. Schools that don't need to mention school shooters. Streets and parks filled with pedestrians and children instead of tents and homeless people. We, on the other hand, have the world's largest collection of billionaires. Most Americans probably didn't realize this was the choice they were making back in the election of 1980 when Reagan and Bush promised morning in America. But here we are. We have been just basically sold out to the billionaires by all these years of Republican, Reaganomics. What do we do about it? Well, there's a lot we can do about it, and it starts with getting politically active. There's a great op-ed about this over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled, America Chose Wealth Over Well-Being. Check it out.
A handshake in the shadows, a deal beneath the storm. Promises of progress, but the fire starts to form. They smile with sharp intentions, their words a deadly game. And every inch you give them, they set your soul aflame. They'll dress up lies as compromise, but the truth is razor thin. You think you've won a battle where they begin. Evil doesn't fade, it devours, it consumes. It's the shadow in the doorway, the smoke that chokes the room. You can't tame a beast that feeds on fear and power. Evil doesn't compromise.
Welcome back. 22 minutes past the hour. No, evil does not compromise. We need to fight back. 34 things for working people that Republicans are now going to cut. Again, we don't have anything formal yet, but what happened was the Jody Arrington, the Republican Congressman Arrington, he's on the House Budget Committee. I believe he's its chair. I might be wrong. But apparently via him, Politico just got their hands on this document about what the House Budget Committee is planning on cutting. You know, where the cuts are going to happen. How are they going to pay for the tax breaks for Elon Musk and for Mark Zuckerberg and for Donald Trump and for, you know, all the other billionaires. And here's the list. Number one, they want to repeal major Biden health rules. There's save $420 billion. They're going to do away with mandatory staff minimums in nursing homes. They're going to do away with abortion and Affordable Care Act plans, telehealth, and AI. They're going to do away with increased protections for people with disabilities. And they're going to do away with new network for psychological services. So that they think is going to save them $400 billion. They want to, quote, strengthen Medicare for seniors. That's going to save them almost $1 billion. They're going to do this by doing uncompensated care and bad debt. What this is Medicare reimburses hospitals services to people who have no insurance and are broke, right? If you're poor and you show up at a hospital and they provide you with services, whatever you need, it is paid for by Medicare. And, through this fund. It's a large amount of money. And these are called disproportionate share hospitals. So cutting this is going to save hundreds of billions of dollars. It's going to mean hospitals are no longer serving people who don't have insurance. You're going to have a lot more people die. And a lot of rural and small hospitals are going to close, particularly hospitals in poor neighborhoods where a large percentage of the people showing up don't have the money to pay for services. Say they want to make Medicaid work for the most vulnerable. This is $2.3 trillion. They're going to put into place per capita caps on Medicaid. That will cut Medicaid reimbursements by almost $1 trillion, $918 billion. In other words, it's just not going to pay for things anymore. They're going to equalize Medicaid payments for able-bodied adults. This is the $600 billion, $690. This is fancy language for saying if you can't get a job, you can't get Medicaid. And of course, once you get a job, you're no longer eligible for Medicaid. So it's a real catch-22. And that's the Medicaid work requirements. Reimagining the Affordable Care Act. There's $151 billion in cuts they want to make out of the Affordable Care Act. Are you noticing a trend here, by the way? All of these things that Republicans want to cut in order to pay for
Jeff's and Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, all of these things are things so far that have average, people and poor people in America, particularly health-wise. They want to repeal the Prevention Public Health Fund, $15 billion. They want to, like I said, $151 billion in cuts to the Affordable Care Act. They want to, quote, end cradle-to-grave dependence. The first is reducing TANF by 10%, $6 billion, eliminating the TANF fund. This is the program that basically it costs us about $6 billion. This is the program that replaced basically, SNAP, food stamps. They want to eliminate the contingency fund, the food plan. They say that's going to save $270 billion. This is basically to hungry people. And they want to reverse the Biden climate policies. This is the first thing that they propose that mean less health care for people. They want to do away with the EV mandate, and they want to repeal the green energy grants. That's going to be $460 billion. And then they want to end the student loan bailout. That's $200 billion. And they want to cut 30% from federal employee benefits. And they want to do away with $200 billion in green energy tax credits and the child tax credit for people on Social Security.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's crazy. Meanwhile, the Russians are showing up on blue sky in a big way. I'll tell you about that right after the break, and I'll pick up your calls. What's on your mind today? Stay with us. Today's book in our Thom Hartmann Book Club here is Resist, How a Century of Young Black Activists Shaped America by a Nigerian-American reporter, Rita Omoka. And this is from the introduction. It's titled African, American. I am African. I am American. Nigeria made me. Black America raised me. My roots dig deep in Nigerian soil, while America has nourished my branches for more than 2 decades. Air holds the essence of both lands. Like a tree nurtured by 2 suns, my identity defies simple categorization. It's a unique blend, a testament to the richness of embracing intertwined belonging. I belong to the Edo people. That's one of the hundreds of vibrant tribes that make up the rich mosaic of Nigeria. Though we share similar features, our identities are deeply infused by our ethnicity, dialects, systems. Our belief systems, Christianity, Islam, and other traditional religions, coexist, shaping our perspectives and enriching our communities. And while colorism, the concept of race, as understood elsewhere, simply doesn't hold the same weight. Yet in the United States, my identity has been defined by this uniquely American construct of race. Those physical characteristics of skin, color, hair, facial features are prominent, no value. Despite this flawed framework, I've since come to wholly embody Nigerian American. I favor that designation because it pays homage to the 2 distinct individualities that make me, for years though, felt at odds, at once fraught yet covetous of each other, as though pledging allegiance to one meant disregard for the other. Throughout, I never understood nor appreciated my American blackness the way I could have. A surrogate one, yes, but still there's a belonging there that I neglected. For black immigrants, I'd assume this is true for most immigrants, our identity in America of just being black without a sense of cultural home within that identity presents myriad confusions. In Nigeria, I am not a black girl, a black anything. I am my mother's last-born child and only daughter from Benin City in the southern region of Nigeria, just 250 miles south of its capital city, Abuja. I am the granddaughter of an unlettered woman who rose to run a small business as a local Guinness and Coca-Cola distributor. I am not this color. America relegated me to. This is what I've struggled with all these years, having one foot in and out of America's definition of who I am, and out of the many groups I find myself in, constantly toggling between three worlds: Black America, white America, and my Nigerian culture. Contending with this skin so problematic in America, skin that in Nigeria is synonymous with endless striving in a pursuit of excellence, I come from a history full of it. The story passed down to us were of kings and queens, colonization be damned, in gold and oil and gemstones. Academically and professionally, the grind for achievement was instilled in us because everyone strives for the same caliber of achievement. To go from a country full of this to one stripped of it for racially black people doesn't quench our thirst for progress or success. Many foreigners to America see what feels innate to the native. That newness breeds prospect and appreciation. Immigrants gravitate toward the idea that America carries out a true democracy. It is better than none or fascism. Like many immigrants, Mom came to this country in 1992, wide-eyed and gazed upon its endless feast of opportunities and upward mobility, concluding that America provides for those who work hard. Fleeing from a corrupt government with lawlessness and instability, she quickly adopted this nation as a means of survival. And for some time, it all seemed so simple. When my brothers and I joined Mom in the South Bronx in 1995, her vision of America became ours, too. She charged us with representing our heritage exceptionally well. There's a Nigerian saying in our pidgin English, Naija no de carry last, which means Nigerians should never come in last place. That was Mom's core message to us: persevere and succeed. Race, racism, and the like were never discussed. They were never factors in our quest of American success. Our goal was to be ambitious and unwavering in our pursuit, even if it meant inadvertently ignoring America's complex history. By coming to America, we unknowingly became part of the Black American community. Though racially similar, there were deeply rooted differences between them and us. It's those generational and lived experiences that have long divided us. Their history of brutal oppression is one that we Black immigrants don't have, and one I didn't understand. It remains the wedge and genesis of tensions between Black Americans and Black immigrants. For the Black American, there's the endless fight to be equal to whites politically and economically. And for the Black immigrant, there's the romanticized view of America as a place of limitless opportunities. The book by Rita Omaka is Resist: How a Century of Young Black Activists Shaped America.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
That spark inside, burning bright and true. A call to stand, a voice to raise, it's all up to you.
Welcome back, 34 minutes past the hour. So Russian disinformation agents are popping up, worldwide.com, documenting this. It's pretty amazing. They've got the screenshots of all these. It's showing up on Blue Sky now, these Russian troll accounts. With their anti-Ukraine propaganda. There's a whole series of them that all say the exact same thing, with names like Elias Smith and Robert J. Fuller and Ball and Lima and whatnot. But anyhow, here's the message about deal making. And I wouldn't be surprised if he sees a strategic alliance with Russia as a smart move to counter China's rise. And this is literally repeated with a whole bunch of different over and over and over again. It's really remarkable. It's just, it's clear Trump sees the bigger picture. A strategic alliance with Russia will help us contain China's ambitions. Right. A strategic alliance with Russia under Trump could be the key to keeping China in check without escalating tensions. There's a whole bunch of these. I'm guessing that given that this is now, these are now the Russian talking points. This is the talking point that Russia is injecting in, and obviously, if they're doing it on Blue Sky, they're doing it everywhere. That this is going to become one of the talking points we're going to hear from the GOP and from Donald Trump. It's going to be real interesting to see. Is Trump going to continue to bow down to Vladimir Putin? Is he going to continue to act like he's just terrified by Vladimir Putin? Or is he going to stand up on his own 2 feet? Is he going to defend America's interests rather than Russia's interests? I mean, we don't know how this is going to play out. He's a lame duck. He's not going to be running for re-election. He's got enough scams running right now that he's got kind of unlimited. He's got the nation's billionaires now, walking up to him and handing him $1 million checks. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't you love to have, Jeff Bezos walk up to you and say, hey. And so, it may be that he no longer needs Putin. It may be that he no longer fears Putin because Putin can't blackmail. Nothing Putin could say or do that's going to hurt Trump, really. I mean, look at everything else that has been exposed. I mean, what? He hired some hookers in Moscow. I mean, everybody would shrug their shoulders. So I suspect there's a small chance that Trump may stand up to Putin. Now, if he doesn't, I won't be surprised. But Republicans all seem to be kind of holding their breath, waiting to hear which direction Trump's going to go when it comes to Putin and Ukraine and China and all this kind of stuff. It's going to be real interesting to see. We'll probably find out in a week or two. So, what's on your mind? Picking up your calls. Jessica, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for always helping us get through these stressful times.
Doing my best.
I have to chime in on Pete Hesse's confirmation. And Pete Hesse needed to be taken seriously. I think his answers. I think more than he knew nothing, and he would answer ahead. And my question is, did he major in auto mechanics at Princeton, or did he passes? He couldn't answer most questions, and would say, myself with smart people. He said that more than once, and he could not answer any of Tammy Duckworth's questions, which were great, about all the different countries. And Senator Reid was so thorough from the very start. He talked about his endless drunkenness, and Trump's fine with an alcoholic in charge of our country's military. And Senator Reid, how Hesse financially destroyed 2 vet organizations to the ground, and then the absence of FBI reports for the Democrats.
Right.
Never was raped and paid off to stay silent. And
the FBI did the same thing with Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a scandal, Jessica. And did you see Pam Bondi this morning doing the same little slippery,
She scares me. She refused to answer if she would go after Trump's enemies. She never answered that.
Exactly. Yep.
So I guess Biden does need to pardon a lot of people, maybe.
I think so, and I hope he does.
Yeah.
I would take one, too.
Yeah, he would not. I'm going to tell him when I call.
No,
But it is so scary. She can't even answer that.
Yeah, it's not a good or healthy thing. It really isn't. Jessica, thanks for the call, and thanks for pointing it all out. That you did a great job. Mike in Lomita, California. Hey, Mike, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I just was struck by the differences between these past wildfires we've had and the way it was not that many years ago.
Mm-hmm. Where is Lomita?
It's sort of in the harbor area of L.A.
Oh, okay. So you're in the greater LA area. So yeah, okay. Keep
Right.
going, Mike.
Well, one of the things I noticed is that this time, after this incident, we've had a lot of spontaneous aid efforts springing up, people using social media and organizing all sorts of giveaways for people who've been displaced,
Right.
doing on a big scale what the Red Cross typically will do after people are burned out.
Yeah.
And it's been a real inspiration. A bunch of unions got together and made a food bank for one of the valleys up in the general area. Things like that are a real source of inspiration.
This
There
is
are other changes.
Yeah, this is an absolutely massive tragedy, Mike. I'm concerned. My biggest concern is what this is going to do psychologically to people. I mean, how many people are going to be the walking wounded, and what the consequences, particularly children, what the consequences of that
That's
will
what
be.
struck me. There was a young fellow on there news the other day who was late, almost a teenager, and talking about the sorts of fears he had about the place after seeing his classroom gutted so badly. And it reminded me of my own childhood when I was exposed to a picture of some wildland firefighters who'd all been burned, and they're just charred corpses. Our family always went up the mountains for camping every summer, and that really bothered me until I got told, well, no, it's a different sort of fire circumstances. But I can't help wondering what's going to happen with all these kids after this secure place that they've known so well.
I think we're going to have a lot of the walking wounded, and some of them are going to turn out really badly. Some of them are, they're going to have just trust problems their whole entire lives. I mean, their world has been turned upside down. Most of us have never had that experience, thank God.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot like people who have survived a war.
Yeah. By the way, another difference from now and back when is that they've had to deal with homeless peoples, the populations that go down into river channels, and usually there's a problem with the fire department needing to do swift water rescues when the rainy season comes. And now I've got fire dislocations affecting homeless people.
Yeah, it's
in
got
those
to be a tough one
areas
too.
as well.
It's got to be a tough one too. Mike, I need to move along. Thank you for the call, and thanks for raising a really important issue. I appreciate it. Al in Fayetteville, Tennessee. Hey, Al, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. And before I make my comment, I just wanted to thank you for your decades of hard work on liberal policies and politics.
Thank you, Al.
We're lucky to have you. I'm a Roosevelt Democrat, and I used to have a little program, co-hosted it and co-created it back in the 2000s called Democratic Talk Radio. We were on AM and FM. Thank you very much. We were on for many years and a lot of stations, and it was a lot of fun, and I do miss it. But what I wanted to ask you today was, I'm thinking about the political future of the Democratic Party and the left, and is there, we haven't even got Trump inaugurated yet and all that, but is there anyone that you think that is the future of the Democratic Party and the progressive left?
A lot of people point to Maxwell Frost or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Jasmine Crockett. I would put those three kind of at the top of my list. Interestingly, they're all people of color.
AOC would be my choice.
Yeah, and Gavin Newsom.
And Gavin Newsom.
I think Gavin Newsom has a very good chance of becoming.
I do too.
And I believe that one of the reasons why we've got now 6 Republicans, 4 senators, including the Speaker of the House, who've come out and said that they want to basically kneecap California. They want to put conditions on aid to California, disaster aid to California, because they want to hurt Gavin Newsom. They want to turn Californians against him, and they see this as their opportunity. I mean, these people, as I said at the very beginning, I think are fundamentally evil. I can't.
Right, I agree.
Al,
well,
thanks
Tom,
for the
keep
call.
up the great work.
By the way, Al, who do
Thank
you
very
see
much.
as the future of the Democratic Party?
AOC and Gavin Newsom. I totally
Cool.
agree with you.
Okay, good. Thanks for the call. Good talking to you. It's 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, your media support group for We the People.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Speaking the truths the multinational corporations and Mike Johnson would really rather you didn't know all about. I'll be right back with you. And just a reminder, the entire next hour will be Congressman Pocan taking your calls. So Mateo will be going through all the calls on hold and saying, do you want to hold for Congressman Pocan or, call back in an hour, but just a heads up on that. Michelle in Camano Island, Washington. Hey, Michelle, what's up?
Oh, well, thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I'm concerned about Mike Johnson having what authority does he have to say, raise the flags? It's so disrespectful, and isn't it stop this code from doing that? I mean, I'm 75 years old, and a few years ago, I laid down in front of a dump truck for something I believed in. I expect my Congress to act accordingly.
Yeah. Well, the sad reality or simple reality, Michelle, is that the Speaker of the House has pretty much complete control over that building. Anything that happens in that building, including when the flag is raised or not raised, and it's unilateral. There's no oversight to his power. There's no independent agency or watchdog. I mean, he can do this. And by the way, this is a relatively new thing. Dwight Eisenhower started this in 1957, and every administration has honored that ever since. But the Trump administration is not going to honor that, and Mike Johnson is not going to. It's kind of a sad thing, but it's not like it goes back to the founding of the Republic.
Well, that leads me to my second question. I remember Dwight Eisenhower. I liked him, even though I was a kid.
Yeah, I like Ike was his campaign slogan when he ran for re-election in '56. I remember it
my
well.
My question is, isn't that anybody, representatives, can demand a recall of the Speaker? So why aren't Democratic and progressive congressmen exercising that right?
Because, well, yeah, yes, it was one person. They just, when they, on January 3rd, when the new House was sworn in, they have to re-ratify the House rules, and they changed the House rules so that instead of one person being able to, now takes, I believe, 9, or maybe it's 7, but, it's something like that. It's in the neighborhood of just a little fewer than 10 people. And, yeah, Democrats could certainly do that. But A, they may end up with somebody who's even crazier than, at least he's relatively predictable. B, the outcome would not be probably particularly disruptive. In fact, the Republicans would probably just say, okay, cool, you've challenged him, we're going to just vote you down. And so the Democrats would end up, with egg on their face, looking like they were just trying to be trolls. And, well, I guess the C is back to the A. If they were successful, if Democrats were successful, then you might end up with somebody that you really don't want in the Speaker's position, somebody even more dangerous than Mike Johnson, although he's pretty bad. But it would just be it would be seen as trolling, and you just generally don't do that. I mean, in fact, I can't think of any time it's ever been done by the party that is out of power. Because they ultimately don't have the ability to fill in that position. Michelle, thanks for the call. It is 10 minutes before the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds with more of your calls. Stay tuned.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So have you noticed that the Republicans are pretty much not talking about a constitutional convention anymore? They used to be gung-ho. They wanted to put corporate personhood in there, change it so that women can't vote. They wanted to do away with the election of senators, repeal the 17th Amendment, take us back to them being appointed by the states. They had all these weird, they wanted to outlaw labor unions, all these weird ideas, but they've stopped talking about it. I mean, they're still moving forward on it, but it's not. Project 2025, for example, their ultimate talking document, does not have one single mention in it about a constitutional convention. Why would that be? Well, it's because the Supreme Court is doing their work for them. I mean, they have overturned Article 2, First, 4th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. They've overturned Article 1, Section 7. All the details of this whole thing are over at HartmannReport.com. You got to check it out.
Turn off that channel, it's filling you with lies, spreading fear and anger beneath those polished ties. They twist the truth and bend the facts, it's all a grand disguise. Don't let them rot your mind away, don't buy their alibis. Don't listen to Fox, so-called news, it's misleading, it's wrong.
52 minutes past the hour. Yeah, Fox, oh God. Max in Santa Cruz, California. Hey, Max, what's up? Max, watching Free Speech TV in Santa Cruz? Going once?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. Hey, Max, what's up?
Okay. Yeah, I'm as far as in LA, and after hearing these last callers, I have to say a couple of things before I speak. One, everybody needs to reread their Constitution, because it seems to me that nobody really knows what's going on in that document. People really need to restudy it. Two, as an immigrant, an African immigrant, I must say I'm quite offended all of these people trying to speak up for the so-called poor black and brown voices, like we can't speak for ourselves. So when it came up to the speaking about Hegseth being an alcoholic, I'm not a left or right guy, I'm an independent, but I must say that Joe Biden did hire a guy, Sam Brinton, who stole a Tanzanian woman's whole design clothes and actually tried to sport it. So when people try to talk about moralities and decent people in the White House, they need to cut this crap out, try to say, well, Biden was better, because he clearly didn't know who to choose. But when it comes to this fire, talk about Newsom as the next presidential candidate, that's a joke. He lost $24 billion for homeless. He also didn't allow for the water to be done so it could flow down south. He prevented the building of these reservoirs so that people could have water. Now, when it comes to the Senate...
Now, I'm just not buying it, Max. Gavin Newsom did not prevent the creation of reservoirs. And the reservoirs are all full, with the exception of one up in Palisades that was being repaired that wasn't necessary for the firefighting. Take your Fox News-based BS to another program, please, Max. Anna in Atlanta. Hey, Anna, what's on your mind today?
Oh, hi. I'm actually a little nervous about this. So I'm actually calling in because I work for CVS Aetna. So I can certainly say a lot about the kerfuffle with the Medicare and Medicaid the Medicare Advantage plans that Dr. Oz is pushing. Mm-hmm. As we know, United has gotten a ton of really terrible press, but CVS has also had a bunch of lawsuits February 6th, February 29th, and then the most recent one with the DOJ in Rhode Island. I'm actually a Substack writer. I have a Substack called Anonymous in Hell, where I detail a lot of this stuff and also try to walk people through their insurance paperwork. Mm-hmm. And I will just say, I will go to the wall about how horrible the health insurance is. Just to let you know, CVS made $160 billion in profit in 2024.
In profit?
And they paid in profit.
That's like what's left over after all expenses. That's gross profit. I did, like I said, I write on the Substack is Anonymous in Hell. I do write on there frequently. And they made $160 billion in profit. Their revenue total was
about $360 billion. They pay most of their workers less than $40,000 a year, and they impose metrics specifically to where it's almost like Amazon, where we're not allowed to leave our desks.
Wow. So that's amazing. Why did tell me about your Substack newsletter?
So it's a political Substack. Political mostly with that. So I do write about society as well. It's great. I just started this right around the time of Brian Thompson's murder because I was kind of inspired to do something.
Right. So how do you said the name but it didn't make sense to me. Can you spell it or explain it?
Yes, absolutely. ANANOMIS in hell.
Okay. .com or?
It's on Substack.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
But yes, sir. I can attest to you, and they are starting to use AI as well. I think about 30% right now of claims are being processed through AI. I'm not 100% sure about prior auths, but they don't treat their workers much better than they treat their members at all.
Anonymous in hell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. I just found it. I will subscribe to ANA. You need to get your headline on there fixed at the very top. It doesn't have the name of your newsletter, FYI.
Oh yeah, I got it fixed.
Yeah.
I'm still learning the whole process.
Yeah, no, I get it. Anna, thanks a lot for the call, and good luck with your newsletter. I wish you the very best. We'll be back with Congressman Pocan in just a moment.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
Today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Separated by the Border, a birth mother, a foster mother, and a migrant child's 3,000-mile journey by Gina Thomas. This is from the introduction. How good is your Spanish? And would you be able to take in a 4-year-old girl? She's from Honduras and speaks minimal English. The social worker had texted me on a Friday afternoon. I sat at my desk, bent over my cell phone, reading and rereading the text. My thoughts traveled to Honduras, bachata, ballades, clothes hanging on the line. So many things in our lives seem to have prepared us for this moment. My son was attending a bilingual school. I'm a former ESL teacher, and my husband Andrew and I speak Spanish. Plus, Honduras already had a piece of my heart. As those thoughts came, I tried to push them away. The voice of logic came in loud and strong. We had just gotten into a routine with our daughter. 2 foster children and 2 biological children would be too much for us to handle. Our first month as foster parents taught us this, and for the sake of everyone involved, we knew it would be very unfair to try that again. A little later, the social worker called and left me a message saying, "It looks like the Office of Refugee Resettlement, the ORR, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, will get her on Monday in court. It'll only be the weekend. Call me back after you talk to Andrew." I asked Andrew when I got home, "We can manage 4 kids for one weekend, right?" He said he doubted it would last only a weekend, but I convinced him that if ORR and ICE were involved, they would get her on Monday. A few minutes later, I called our social worker and said that we'd do it. When I walked into the social worker's office, Julia was sitting there in a brand new bright pink Barbie t-shirt. The social worker said they'd found the t-shirt in their clothing closet and Julia wanted it. Beautiful, soft onyx curls framed the girl's umber face. Her dark complexion made me speculate she was from a coastal region. She stood in dirty flip-flops next to the social worker's chair, chit-chatting away in Spanish without a care in the world. "Julia's been talking my ear off," the social worker said. "She's so sweet, but I have no idea what she's saying." Another tote bag with a few other items from the clothing closet, including a pair of sequined high-top sneakers that Julia had picked out. I began to speak to Julia, pronounced Julia, in Spanish. She seemed happy to hear her mother tongue, but her body language didn't budge. I read that signal loud and clear, so I kept my distance and sat down on the floor. "¿Cómo se llama?" I asked. "Julia." "¿Cuántos años tienes?" "How old are you?" "Cuatro," 4. She looked older than 4 to me. I had been told her parents were deported and she was left behind. She was under federal jurisdiction. I would find out later this was all misinformation. I signed some papers and said, "We'll see you on Monday." I asked Julia if she would come stay with me and my family for the weekend. She smiled. I told her I had 3 other kids. Her eyes expanded. On the drive home, she jolted my Spanish from its slumber. The social worker wasn't kidding about how much this little one talked. On April 6, 2018, U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced a new zero-tolerance policy in which the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice would partner for the sake of prosecuting illegal entry into the United States. Sessions said, quote, "If you cross this border unlawfully, then we will prosecute you. It's that simple. If you smuggle aliens across our border, then we will prosecute you. If you are smuggling a child, then we will prosecute you, and that child will be separated from you as required by law. If you don't like that, then don't smuggle children over our border." End quote. 6 weeks later, almost 2,000 children had been separated from their parents at the border since the zero-tolerance policy took effect. When Sessions announced the administration's new policy, I couldn't comprehend the cruelty. I also wondered if it explained why a preschooler was living under my roof. Julia had come to live with me and my family in February of 2018, and it felt surreal to be a part of her story. She had first been separated from her mother, Guadalupe, called by her nickname Lupe through the rest of this book, by smugglers who were paid to bring them across the border. Julia had then been separated from her stepfather, Carlos, by U.S. Customs and Border Protection, likely because what was recognized by the Honduran government as stepfather was not recognized by the U.S. government as the same, a detail I didn't understand until an immigration expert read the first draft of this book and explained it. Julia had already suffered much trauma, and separating her from her stepfather had only inflicted more. The weight of the trauma that we, as a nation, began inflicting on vulnerable children and their parents was cruel and unusual punishment. When I heard that my own country was going to begin separating children regularly from their parents as a policy, it broke me. Reality became surreal, and Andrew and I learned to live in it, separating the trauma from our emotions so that we could survive. As the veil of Oz is ever lifting from my white evangelical American eyes, what I now see is simply heartbreaking. Government-secured human rights are mostly for privileged white people. Julia is not white. Julia is undocumented. Julia's first language is Spanish. Julia is a girl. These are all labels that set her back in a society made by and for white, passport-holding, English-speaking males. But God, who is neither white nor male, despite my use of the pronoun he, shines his good news on every human being alike. The book is Separated by the Border by Gina Thomas.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, welcome to the second hour of our program and to Middays with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls. He represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin in the U.S. House of Representatives. He's a current member and the chair emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and co-founder and co-chair of the Labor Caucus and chair of the Congressional Equity Caucus, or Equality Caucus, excuse me. Pocan.house.gov, and over on Blue Sky, Pocan.house.gov. Congressman, welcome back to the program. I'm wondering what's your take on all the events of the day, the Hegseth hearings yesterday, the ones that are going on today, and also, there's been announced a peace deal with Hamas and Israel, and Donald Trump has come out and taken credit for it, and Lauren Boebert just said, wow, look at how much President Trump has accomplished already. I mean, she literally just tweeted that about the peace deal.
Lots going on, for sure. And, I think on that, it's just so long overdue that, many of us are just going to celebrate it and not worry about the credit side of it all as much as, unfortunately, a minimum of 46,000 people have been killed in Palestine, 1,000 in Israel. Devastation completely of Gaza has come out of all of this, and anything that can end the killing is positive. And I'm again long overdue. Very glad to have that happen. On the other fronts, starting to see some of these cabinet secretaries. Potential cabinet secretaries come forth and talk to the Senate. I thought Hegseth, I only watched a little bit because I've been really busy this week, but not answering any questions, really. He just didn't meet with the Democratic senators ahead of time, like tradition always happens. It's I think foreshadowing of what may start happening on Monday when Donald Trump actually becomes president, and I think we need to be worried about that quite a bit.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to share or get out here before we start picking up calls?
No, I think let's just go ahead and take calls, Tom. That sounds good.
Let's do it. Mark in South Bend, Indiana, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, good afternoon, Congressman Pocan. An honor to talk with you again. I got a question I was talking to Tom about the other day is cryptocurrency. Now that Trump's back in, and he's with Musk. Musk is big in cryptocurrency, big billion-dollar accounts and that. And whoever the Treasury Secretary is, I don't know if you serve on the House Banking Committee or not, or Finance Committee. But, I talked to Tom. We got cut off. It ran out of time eventually. That technically Trump and Musk and the Secretary of Treasury could try to come up with a law saying that in future debt cycles that the Treasury conducts with the Federal Reserve, they could purchase cryptocurrency accounts internationally instead of do actual Treasury debt auctions. And the cryptocurrency wouldn't be collecting an interest that is paid for by the taxpayers.
So, Mark, I need you to get to your question for Congressman Pocan.
My question is, Congressman Pocan, have you ever heard anything about that, or as an option of replacing Treasury auctions cycles?
No, as you said, I'm not on the Financial Services Committee. However, I can tell you this. In addition to Elon Musk's involvement with cryptocurrency, about $400 million was spent in the collections during the elections by crypto forces. I think they're definitely going to be, there's going to be some plays for legislation in this session just by that kind of activity alone, much less watching where the administration may go with some of the key players like Elon Musk. So we have to watch it all very closely, just make sure we're making the right decisions around this. But there's definitely been a lot of influence just in the last few months in this area, and that means we got to watch it extra closely.
James in Montgomery, Alabama. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thank you, Tom. Hello, Representative. It's an honor to talk to you. I was wondering, From what I understand, the Republicans have a one-seat majority in the House. Is that true?
So technically, we have 215 seats. They have 220 with Matt Gaetz gone, I think is my math on this. What it comes down to is with two of the appointments that Trump is pulling out of the House, they will have a one-seat margin until there are special elections.
Plus, one of their members is in a dementia home.
But she didn't run again, so that one doesn't matter for numbers. So, yeah, so I think what it just comes down to is they have a one-seat margin effectively until probably early April.
James,
wow.
Thank you for the call. Colleen in Seattle. Hey, Colleen, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom, and thank you for taking my call, and a longtime listener. And I really, after hearing a woman talk about Medicare Advantage last week on Mark's program, I just wanted to say, how do people push back on Medicare Advantage, and why are we beholden to them when it's our accounts they're gambling with? I'm presently in I'm trying to get off Medicare Advantage and to go to Original, and they totally generated this result of a health questionnaire that was AI generated, obviously. It's totally false information. And so I'm now stuck in trying, the hamster wheel of this appeal, trying to,
You don't need their permission, Colleen, to leave. You need Medicare to take you. But Medicare Advantage people, they will lie to you. They will flood you with BS. But you don't need their permission to go to real Medicare. But let's let Congressman Pocan. Was there a specific question, Colleen? I'm sorry.
Well, that's how do we push back? I feel like I'm stuck in this, and like they have their claws in me.
Got it, Congressman.
So, Colleen, in about an hour and a half, I have Wendell Potter, who is a former health insurance executive who's become a whistleblower and talks very negatively about these Medicare Advantage programs. They're very profitable, about twice as profitable as normal health insurance, but all the problems. And I have a sheet you can't see unless you're watching on TV right now, but of questions for Wendell Potter and problems that we've seen with the program. And there are many, including the problem you're having is trying to get back to Medicare once you've been on Medicare Advantage. I think the main thing we have to do is reach out to our elected officials and talk about this. A majority of people in this country, Tom, are now on Medicare Advantage or on Medicare, and that's a private insurance alternative. And when I ask people in town halls who's on Medicare Advantage, most people don't really know the difference. They just see Medicare in the name. They assume it's Medicare. And Medicare Advantage is a private insurance alternative to Medicare. Only Medicare is Medicare. So we are actually putting out a whole bunch of new legislation around this. We've been talking to some of the advocates about a half a dozen new bills to try to raise awareness to do just what you're talking about, Colleen, what the problems are with it. And in the meantime, just make sure people know when those periods come to sign up, a lot of commercials will be on TV. There won't be for Medicare. There will be for Medicare Advantage. Don't let people get fooled.
Right, and don't even bother telling your Medicare Advantage company or asking them permission to leave. They will lie to you. They will BS you. You'll probably end up hooked up with a salesperson who's working on a commission. It's crazy. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls. It's Middays with Mark. We'll be back with more of your calls for Representative Pocan in just a moment. You can find his website at Pocan, pocan.house.gov, pocan.house.gov, all that other stuff over on Blue Sky. So check it out. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
The Chair Emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus taking your calls for the hour. Stay with us. And welcome back. Amy in Madison, Wisconsin. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Congressman Mark Pocan. This is Amy. You know me, Amy S. Anyway, Governor Evers is great, right? But about a month or two, they asked for a waiver for Medicaid because we haven't expanded it for people, 18 or 21 through 65. were you aware of that? What happened to that? You know anything about that, Mark?
Not offhand. I mean, know that without the legislature also approving, and that's been the problem, we still have we had a gerrymandered legislature. We just picked up this fall under Ben Wickler's leadership for the Assembly and the Senate, but the Republicans still have the legislative majority. They have not been willing to expand Medicaid. We're one of a handful or two left of states that haven't done it. So unfortunately for many people, they're at a disadvantage in Wisconsin.
Do you think that Ben has a good chance of becoming DNC chair?
I hope so. You know, I'll tell you, it's a two-person race from everything we can tell. And, you know, one person, Ken Martin, a well-respected chair of Minnesota Party, is the chair of the chairs, kind of the ultimate insider. You know, so if you like the way the party handled things in November, he's probably the people's pick. If you want someone who's more of an outsider, that's Ben Wickler, who's done an amazing job in Wisconsin. But I think, you know, the race is election. It's coming up, and there's 448 DNC delegates that make up the decision on this. So tonight there's a forum for Democratic members of Congress. I'll be at. Tomorrow night's the first official forum for the DNC in Detroit. I'm going to that as well. But I hope people know the unbelievable experience we've had in Wisconsin. You know, I've been in politics since I was 8 in my state because my dad was involved when I was younger, and I've never seen a chair like we've had in Ben Wickler.
He's a hell of a guy. He really is. Tom, in Media, Pennsylvania, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, thanks for taking my call. A week or two ago, Mr. Pocan, I called you about extending the middle-class tax cuts, and I think there was a misunderstanding.
Yes,
even Tom said last week maybe I misphrased the question, and I'm going to rephrase the question. Middle-class tax cuts are very important to us in the middle class. 90% would get them. We don't want them to not be extended. So here's my question. Would you extend the middle-class tax cuts of 2017 per households making up to $215,000 a year? No millionaire tax cuts, no extraneous stuff attached to the bill that would give anyone excuses to oppose it. And this isn't hypothetical. It can be done. Would force the GOP to show your hand. So will you support this clean bill for the middle class, yes or no?
Yeah, Tom, so yes or no is never a great way of asking the question, but I do think there was a misunderstanding last time, and thanks for calling again. I don't think we can't put things on the floor. Only the Republicans can, short of a discharge petition, and that it takes a long process. They're going to try to do all this through reconciliation. My guess is this is not the direction Republicans are going. So I would support retaining the small amount of tax cuts that we actually had in that package for the middle class. The problem is the vast majority of the money, and I think it's something like over 80% or something like that, went to the top 1% by the end of those cuts.
Yeah, and will again if they have their way.
Exactly.
In all probability. Yep. Congressman Mark Pocan with us for the hour, taking your calls. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program. And we'll be back with more of your calls for Representative Pocan in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. From Los Angeles to Columbia, South Carolina, from Birmingham, Alabama to Baltimore, universal basic income programs are chalking up proof after proof of their viability. Basically just giving people, low-income people, poor people, somewhere between $500 and $1,500 a month, no strings attached, is lifting people out of poverty, getting them back on track, getting them into solid middle-class jobs, helping their children tremendously. This works. Now, we don't have to do UBI in the United States. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have a national health care program. Health expenses are whacking a lot of low-income people. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have free college education. Education expenses are whacking people. There's a lot we could do. We can subsidize housing. We can subsidize food. We do that with food stamps. We could expand it. There's a lot we could do
to benefit from this. There's a whole report about that over at hartmanreport.com. Check it out.
Turn the dial, tune in, and you'll find a voice of reason for the open mind. On Lefty Talk Radio, we speak the truth about the American dream for me and you.
Welcome back. 21 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan. Joe in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. You're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Hi, Representative. Thank you so much for taking your time to help spread some of the information that's hopefully being picked up by some people that are not able to access better information or getting information from other sources. But I did want to critique the Harris campaign just briefly with the whole idea. They should have been talking about the price gouging aspect of inflation before the convention, which was the first time I heard anyone mention that was Harris in her speech. The other thing is the Democrats don't seem to have a unified message. Republicans' message is real simple. Here's our list of lies. Everybody go repeat them. But the Democrats are kind of all over the place. I watched many congressional debates in the primaries but in the election cycle of 2022. And I was like, no, none of the Democrats are talking about the global aspect of inflation. None of them are talking about the price gouging aspect due to the monopolization. So, but the main point of my call that I told the screener was that I think you guys need to take on the biggest elephant in the room, which is the false religion and the hypocrisy from the Republicans. I've actually turned a couple of Republicans because I told them abortion's main driver is economics.
Yeah.
Well,
Joe, I need you to wrap it up and specify your question, please.
Yeah, to start highlighting that voting against SNAP, voting against health care for the less, for the impoverished.
That these are not Christian things to do, Joe. Is that your point?
100%.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Congressman?
Yeah, so Joe, first of all, I mean, I want to take it even a little farther back. It should have happened under Joe Biden. They should have talked about inflation differently and the global inflation and what we've done around the Inflation Reduction Act, specifically on inflation earlier. Stan Greenberg, who used to be the pollster for Bill Clinton, married to Rosa DeLauro, who is an amazing member of Congress and the ranker on the Dem side for appropriations, had a polling showing that we were talking about the wrong issues and that people were talking about cost of living and we needed to shift. And yet when we shifted, it worked, that people knew we had things to point to and all the rest, and that didn't happen. I just want to say that because I think it started earlier. But one of the things I think this DNC race is about is what does the Dem Party do on messaging? Because you're right, we don't have a single head right now because we don't have a president or a vice president as of Monday. So we need more than ever to get on the same page and repeat things. Unlike the Republicans who just repeat the same lies, we actually have to have some better messaging, and some of that could come out of the DNC certainly as well to be helpful. So couldn't agree with you more.
Bill in Sierra Blanca, Texas. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan. Bill, listening on the Thom Hartmann app in Sierra Blanca, Texas.
Can you? Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Tom,
go for it, Bill. I can hear you fine.
Thank you, Tom, and Representative Pocan. I called last time you were on Tom's show asking about if you believe Trump will carry out his stated threats regarding tariffs and the Gestapo deportation of Mexican and Central Americans here in the United States. Just real quick background. Governor Abbott has offered, and they're planning to build a 5,000-acre detention center in Starr County, Texas, on the border. So I strongly believe we should take them at their word about these tariffs for China and others, and also the deportation aspect. Please take this seriously. What do you think?
Yeah, Bill, so I think the art of what we need to do in the coming months is figure out, what Donald Trump's actually going to do and what's bravado, right? The Gulf of America, Greenland, Panama Canal, Canada, 51st state. I mean, he says a lot of things, but I do think two of the things you mentioned, along with the tax breaks for the wealthiest, are on his for sure list, and he wants to do something with tariffs. I think he's going to have a lot of pushback even within the Republican Party and Republican allies on that. And then on deportation, I think he's going to start with anyone in prison and anyone who just got here, and it's some populations like that. I heard Senator Langford, a Republican, say some of that, and I think he's exactly right. How much further he goes, we don't know, and that's part of what we have to be ready for anything. And you will have governors who are auditioning to be future presidents who will do anything to, double down on those so-called values. So I think we're watching everything, but the art of what we need to do in the coming months is decide what 10% of what he says he's actually going to do. And I think you did highlight a couple things versus the Gulf of America and that kind of stuff.
Congressman, we have 35 seconds. Trump saying that the United States would consider violence to take Greenland and Panama was basically an endorsement of Putin's invasion of Ukraine and Xi's threat to take Taiwan. Why didn't Democrats freak out more loudly? No president has spoken like that in the modern era, in the 20th or 21st century.
Yeah, the problem is, that same day he said many other things too, and at some point it gets diluted. That's why, I think when he does, I bet you next week he may very likely do 100 executive orders, the damage of many of them.
Yeah, I get it. It's Steve Bannon's, fire hose of the S word. I get it. Thank you. 27 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with your calls for Representative Mark Pocan.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's Middays with Mark, back with more of your calls for the Chair Emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Congressman Mark Pocan of Wisconsin. Today is How to Get Rid of a President by David Priess. And this is from the chapter Rejected by the Party, starting on page 12, kind of mid-chapter. Presidents need not be thrown out at the polls on election day to find themselves dislodged from the White House. History shows us that a chief executive's own political allies can remove that incumbent when they perceive him as unpopular or unfit. Refusing to nominate a president for a second term, or better yet, getting the incumbent to realize that he should walk away before it becomes an embarrassing vote at the convention, does bring the party significant pain. But many politicians have calculated that discarding their own party's toxic president by internal action is better than waiting for the voters to do it. This dynamic remained absent for the first half century or so of American politics. George Washington, who didn't represent any formal party, set a precedent by stepping away from re-election after 2 terms. Successor after successor followed suit, keeping the support of their parties until they left office after 8 years. Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, and Jackson lost the next election, both Adamses and Van Buren, or met the Grim Reaper, Harrison. John Tyler, if only in this one respect, was a trendsetter. He began a 6-president cascade of men who failed to appear on their party's ballot in the general election after their first term. One, Zachary Taylor, literally had no choice. Like Harrison, he died in office. The others, by staying alive through their 4-year terms, could have carried their party's banners again on Election Day. Not one did, as national agonizing over slavery and other tensions within each of the major parties made it difficult for any president to build and sustain a governing coalition. Of those 5 chief executives, only James Polk left with a solid reputation and a ledger of successes. He'd told Democrats upon his nomination in 1844, "I shall enter upon the discharge of the high and solemn duties of the office with the settled purpose of not being a candidate for re-election." And he stayed true to his word. It was just as well, only 3 months after what would have been his second inauguration, he died at the age of 53. The 3 presidents who followed Polk, the forgettable series of Millard Fillmore, Franklin Pierce, and James Buchanan, shared 3 characteristics. First, historians routinely rank them among the nation's worst presidents. Second, and related to that, they took no responsibility for resolving the national moral failure of slavery. And third, no matter how they had attained office, they, like future presidents Chester Arthur and Lyndon Johnson, found themselves spurned by their own parties. The Whigs had learned in 1840 that a celebrity candidate seemed to have an easier route into the White House than a party regular. So in 1848, they nominated General Zachary Taylor, a recent hero of battlefields in the Mexican-American War. Despite his lack of solid political principles or any apparent passion for the job, just 2 years earlier, he'd said with apparent sincerity, "I am not and never shall be an aspirant for that honor." Taylor won the election over Democratic candidate Lewis Cass. In July 1850, he became the second straight Whig general to president who couldn't make it to the next election alive. Vice President Millard Fillmore took his place. Fillmore had risen to prominence in New York's anti-Mason party dedicated to exposing and opposing Freemason fraternal organizations, but switched allegiance to the Whigs in the 1830s. In the first year and a half of the administration, inter-party rivals had manipulated Taylor better than Fillmore did, leaving him little to do but preside over the Senate and stew over his fate in a useless job. But as president, he was prepared to avenge perceived slights. Ahead of their expected dismissal, all the cabinet members whom Fillard had inherited from Taylor offered their resignations, which were quickly accepted by the new president. He asked them to remain in place for 1 month. They agreed to stay for 1 week. Fillmore would proceed to fire more previous political appointees than any of his successors had. More than half of those at the State Department, for example, had to find new jobs. The biggest development during Fillmore's presidency was the Compromise of 1850. This set of bills admitted California to the Union as a free state, allowed the organization of the Utah and New Mexico territories without reference to slavery, resolved both the Texas state boundary and the Lone Star State's remaining debt, abolished the slave trade in the District of Columbia, and reaffirmed the fugitive slave law that required the returning of slaves escaped across state lines. Fillmore signed each bill, believing this package of measures had fixed what he considered an annoying issue that kept getting in the way of his other priorities. The compromise bills delayed a war between the states, but at a cost. They not only perpetuated slavery, but split the Whigs further apart, as most Northerners refused to abide by the fugitive slave law. Congressional elections in November 1850 increased the Democratic opposition's majorities in both the House and the Senate. The rest of the president's term was so bad that the highlight might have been the start of Commodore Matthew Perry's voyage to Japan to open that country to American trade, even though he didn't arrive until Fillmore left office. Not long after rising to become the chief executive, Fillmore declared he wouldn't run again in the 1852 election. He reiterated that in 1851. But the trappings of presidential power and the pleas of his remaining party faithful convinced him to retract that pledge and make a late entry into the field of candidates. He portrayed his about-face as a noble personal sacrifice for the good of the party and the country. And during the spring of that election year, 8 Whig state conventions endorsed him. As delegates gathered for what a leading historian of the era calls the longest, most rancorous, and most debilitating Whig national convention ever to meet, the first tally had Fillmore in the lead. How to get rid of a president.
Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. Back in 1968, when Lyndon Johnson was president, Earl Warren resigned from the Supreme Court. He was a liberal, even though he had been appointed by Eisenhower. Johnson wasn't able to replace him, in part because of Republican opposition in the Senate. And so when Nixon came in, he had this opening, but he wanted to have 2 openings. He wanted to get rid of Abe Fortas, who was the most liberal member of the court. So he had his Attorney General, John Mitchell, start an investigation into Abe Fortas's wife. Now, there was nothing there. There was no smoke at all. She had done absolutely nothing wrong, and history has proven that. But they were going to drag her before a grand jury and possibly before Congress and just, drag her through the mud. And this caused Abe Fortas to resign, and that gave Nixon 2 openings, and that's how the court turned to the right. I'm suggesting that Democrats should do the same thing with Justice Thomas. I've got an op-ed about it at Hartmann Report. You can read it over there. Check it out. FieldofGreens.com.
Back 35 minutes past the hour, picking up your calls here for Congressman Mark Pocan, the Chair Emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and representing Wisconsin these days. Well, it has been all along. Omar in Herndon, Virginia, you're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Tom, thanks so much for taking my call, Mr. Pocan. Good day to you, sir. My question is that Biden, on his last days, is there any way that he can offer amnesty to the DACA recipients and whether he can offer immigration amnesty to people who are undocumented? Is that something he can do? And can you promise me that you will bring that to him? Request a meeting with him, Mr. Pocan, and present that idea, and you can take credit for it. Thank you.
We had put together by the Progressive Caucus, a big list of things we had hoped that they could do. They haven't been as robust in doing things in the final couple months, I think, that many of us had hoped. However, I thought yesterday, getting rid of the state sponsor of terrorism designation for Cuba was huge. Some of the other things that he's done just in the last few days is really big. So there's some movement, but it is hard to get to the White House right now to talk to them about things. And I can't make any guarantees because trust me, we've tried with a very long list of things we would have liked to have seen done in the final days.
Holly in Washington, D.C., you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. Thank you, Rep. Pocan, for being so proactive on progressive media. It really helps a lot, which brings me to my question. It seems from everything that I'm reading and hearing that one of the ways that the Democrats lost was the media strategy was too far in the past. The Republicans had really dominated the right-wing media sphere.
And social media.
So if that is, if that's all one thing.
Yeah.
Is there a concern? Does the Democratic Party recognize this? One, two. Is there an organized, funded, concerted effort to switch this around? And if so, why not? If not, why is that true?
Yeah, Holly, you're 100% right. In fact, I think one thing universal by all the different parts of the Democratic Party, we recognize that we've done too much on traditional media. We're not enough like the Republicans have been in some of the more non-traditional media podcasts, some of the other social media aspects. In fact, I think it was of undecided voters, 45% get their information from not traditional media sources, and we just didn't do enough there. And I think, I've certainly heard people like Ben Wickler, and I believe Ken Martin also from the DNC, talking about this as part of the changes that they want to do with the party. But among us as Democrats in Congress, we've had that conversation, which is why I'm doing my first podcast today. Probably won't be up for a couple weeks yet because we got a few things that we're working on with it. But we're doing it to help do more outreach. And I think other members are going to do things like this as well. So you're 100% right. What we realized we didn't do enough of, I think all parts of the Democratic Party kind of realize that, and we absolutely need to do more in non-traditional media.
Yeah, one of the amazing statistics that came out of the exit polling was that people who got all or most of their news from social media were like, 20% more likely to vote for Trump than people who got their news from traditional media? I mean, it's just amazing.
No, and the good news is that literally every, some of us within the Democratic Party disagree on maybe some other parts of what went wrong in November. This is a universal no one has challenged.
Yeah, and of course, Zuckerberg and Musk are pushing this. I saw a statistic a couple days ago, and I'm sorry I don't recall where, that said that right-wing memes are 5 times more likely to be promoted by the algorithms on Facebook and Twitter, or Facebook and X, than are left-wing memes. It's just, I would like to see legislation that requires I wrote a whole book about this, A Hidden History of Big Brother, that requires the algorithm to be published publicly, that they must reveal, how they are skewing social media, to its users.
Tom, I actually tested this with a New York Times article on an issue and got really low response. And I knew, but people who follow my social media generally have a lot of opinions in this area. So I reposted it without the link, and then I added a second part of the thread saying, I'm doing this purposely to test. And within 2 hours, we already had more than 24 hours worth of engagement and people who saw it just without having a link to the New York Times. So clearly, they are up to a lot of things with those algorithms.
Yeah, and they should be public. They really should. And this is Josh Hawley agrees with me on this, for God's sake. Carol in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hello, Tom. Hello, Congressman Pocan. It's good to see you both again. Just wanted a couple things. Earlier caller called about cryptocurrency. And again, just saying it out there so people know. Number one goal of people who hold cryptocurrency is to get the dollars. They want your dollars. That's it. Okay, so on that, my question is, actually, Tom talked to I don't want to call him Screener, Mateo. I want to say his name is very helpful. About having, his name is Ben Freeman, D.C. It's at Ben Freeman, D.C. He was actually a worker in the think tanks. And he pointed out on C-SPAN, I watched the full program on him, but it would be good, Tom, if you could host him for a little bit to have him answer questions on it. But what the gist of his research is, he no longer, he's worked in think tanks, but he did research finding out how the think tanks actually the money that they get, it's dark money. It's not fully disclosed. You don't know who
Carol,
is
I need you to
what.
get to your point or ask your question, please.
Yes, Representative Pocan, please look into the research from Ben Freeman, D.C., and can you bring this up as the think tank full disclosure of all think tank legislation?
So I just wrote down
the Quincy Institute, FYI, that she's talking about.
Quincy does great work on many issues, including international issues and defense issues. By the way, they help us quite a bit on Pentagon overreach. So, Carol, I want to say a fact I said earlier, and I just want to say it again because I want it to sink in for everyone. The amount of money that crypto spent in the last elections was over $400 million. There are not many entities, Tom, that can spend $400 million besides Elon Musk, and his project for Trump, that have put that much into federal elections. And, they don't do it just because they like, the cut of our jaw. It's because they want something. So I think we have to watch very closely for any legislation in this area. I don't even have that much of an opinion because I think a lot of us are still learning a little bit about how this works. But 400 million in elections clearly is a sign that we need people to be watching this very closely.
Yeah, the number one thing to remember is that cryptocurrency is not a currency; it's a commodity.
Yeah.
And once people understand that, then a whole lot of other stuff falls into place. Richard in Chicago. Hey, Richard, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to, before I get on what I wanted to say, I think the Democratic Party's problem is more with mainstream media, but that's just my opinion. But what the reason I called, with the narrow difference in the House, what is the impact of gerrymandering, and why is this topic not number one in America? After all, it's free elections, right? Because it's a one-person vote. Last time around, it was Ohio. They had legal maps. I think that gave the House to the Republicans last cycle. And I don't understand why it isn't every day something we talk about.
Yeah.
Do you think that's correct? Maybe I'm wrong.
No, Richard, you're exactly right. The gerrymandering in North Carolina that they did since the normal process, they came back and changed maps due to them having majorities in the legislature, cost us the House of Representatives. Just the change there alone, how many Dem seats we lost, we would have had 218 seats and been in the majority just because of North Carolina. So you're absolutely right. And in my state of Wisconsin, I'm hoping that someone will do a legal challenge because we challenged her, and in doing so picked up 14 seats, 10 in the Assembly, 4 in the state Senate, to get rid of these almost super majorities that they had. But in Congress, Democrats have 2 of the 8 seats in what is a very purple state. It should be 4 and 4 just by population and voting trends. And all the more reason, you're right, we need to talk about this.
Yeah, this is a big deal. Congressman Mark Pocan, former chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. They're currently representing the state of Wisconsin in the 2nd District in the U.S. House of Representatives. Pocan.house.gov on the website. You can find him over on Pocan.
And we will be back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment. Stay with us. 45 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's Middays with Mark here on the Thom Hartmann Program. And welcome back. Michael in Gainesville, Florida. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, hello, Tom. Congressman Pocan. In regard to the Abundant Christian Life school shooting in Madison, just as the solution to health insurance CEO shootings isn't gun control, it's to change health care, the solution to school shootings is to change our colonialist, racist, competition, and punishment-based education system. None of that has anything to do with education. Competition certainly doesn't. Their purpose is literally to separate the wheat from the chaff, and no child is chaff, and the children know that. If a student is not special needs, then it's the teachers and schools' responsibility to help every child to earn an A, not to force them to sit there.
So what's your question, Michael?
Are they equal? Well, he please, because he said the words that moment of action. I think that's the congressperson's term, moment of action. This is your moment of action to not do what I saw at the MSD school shooting. I wore little blinky shoes from a child that tied them to.
Okay, Congressman, you want to comment on the state of education in America?
Yeah, I honestly had no idea where he was going to be.
Well, he's critiquing, how schools are run, and I get that. But
and how that relates to the school shooting, I'm not fully sure. Other than I'm not sure what he was asking. So
yeah. Okay, Al in Denver, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I would say, I don't know if you gentlemen agree that I would say that President Biden lost the election today. He decided to go along with Netanyahu with his, genocidal war in Gaza, and just, all the progressive people that were against it, he would not listen to any of them. He just went along, with I would say the Israeli lobby, and he thought that will, win him the election.
Yeah. Al, I do think he severely hurt himself and Dem prospects when that happened. I agree. I think, it's easy to say this looking back, but, having him stay in the race so long also, affected lots, because it's hard to put a campaign together for someone uniquely with the little time that, the vice president had. But I agree. I think, part of what cost us in Michigan and a lot of other places, was those positions. And, when he said he was going to stop any additional, big bombs going to Israel for how they're using them in Gaza, and then within days, reverse that position. I think that also was a especially bad decision that cost us.
YouGov just published a poll yesterday. The top reason they polled non-voters, people who had voted Democratic 4 years ago and didn't this time, and the top reason that was cited was Gaza. 29% said that the reason they didn't cast a vote in 2024 was because of Gaza. Second in line was the economy at 24%. Third was immigration at 11%. FYI.
Yeah, no, I didn't. Anecdotally, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, it really does. It's so sad. 49 minutes past the hour. Congressman Mark Pocan with us for the hour, taking your calls. It's Middays with Mark here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be back with more of your calls for Representative Pocan in just a moment. You can find his website at pocan.house.gov. You can find him on Blue Sky at Rep. Mark Pocan. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors. sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us.
It's no coincidence that the time in Europe when the church ran the continent, from around the 5th century to around the 15th or 16th century, that 1,000-year period is referred to as the Dark Ages. This is what happens when religion controls politics, when religion controls the state, the nation. And every nation of Europe was controlled essentially by the Catholic Church during that period of time. It got busted up with the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. This was what the founders of this country very much knew about. George Washington refused to declare himself a Christian. Thomas Paine wrote an entire book embracing atheism. Ben Franklin fled Massachusetts as a teenager to escape the religious threats. And Thomas Jefferson went off on it regularly. There's a whole piece about how the Republicans are trying to impose a new dark age on America. It's all laid out, all the quotes and all the links over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Minutes past the hour. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. Mario in Chicago, you're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Thank you, Mr. Hartmann. Representative, I try to find a way to put this in perspective. I've been listening to this person for 23 years, and he tells me democracy is not a spectator sport. We have to get involved. Also say that despair is not an option. So I was despair. And I have to do something, so I ditch my cars, and I walk, and I talk to everyone that I can, doctors, nurses, heart surgeons, people on the food line. And what I find, that nobody knows the greatest thing that Mr. Biden did in his 4 years, the amazing things that he did. So somebody dropped the ball. Somebody was not available to put in perspective everything that Mr. Biden did. Doctors, surgeons, the lines, and what scares me is the peoples in the food line and the small dollar stores. They do not want and like Mr. Biden. So I don't want to say you guys dropped the ball, but I hope we learn from this, because we have to stop blaming the Republicans and blaming everyone, and we have to take responsibility. Thank you, Mr. Spoken. Mr. Tom, thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree on the message didn't get out there clearly. The first 2 years of the Biden administration I thought were enormously powerful. We got a lot done coming out of COVID, doing things to build back better, really accomplishing a lot of very important things for the American people, and I don't think the messages got out. Part of the problem is some of the monies for infrastructure don't get out now. Like, I just saw some money being announced now. It doesn't do a whole lot of good for a November election if the money's coming out now. But, that was one of the challenges. The biggest challenge, though, still was, many countries like us, 12 or 14 around the world, the leaders were thrown out of power because of inflation. Coming out of COVID, we had a lot of inflation. Everything opened up at once, and that created a lot of demand, limited supply, and we all paid a price for it, and Donald Trump was a beneficiary of it more than anything else. So I agree we should have messaged it absolutely better, but ultimately we had a pretty heavy headwind on global inflation.
Brian in Fairmont, Illinois, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thank you. I was glad to learn that Xarelto, a blood thinner I take, was on the list of 10 drugs that allow Medicare to negotiate lower prices now. Mm-hmm. And I have a Medicare Plan D. The last year I paid $680 for this drug. My price increased to $1,700, almost tripling. I don't think that was what the legislation intended. I've heard of this.
No, first time I'm hearing of something like that. I mean, we know there were some problems on how. I'm not sure if your drug is one on the list, first of all, so that would be something just to be real sure of. But some of the savings were not passed on in other ways after we passed that. And I think that's something we found. And of course, Big Pharma found ways to scam the system. And, we have to make sure we're closing some of those loopholes. The problem is, I don't know with the incoming administration how possible that's going to be. But please double check to make sure your drug was one on that list. And then I would maybe contact your member of Congress and ask that question.
Robert in Lake Havasu, Arizona, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Oh, hello, Professor and Mr. Pocan. Quick question for you, actually a request. We are under a disinformation attack from multiple foreign adversaries. Can we please get some political theater going on? I know that the media likes to ignore the Democratic Party so much, but can you guys please just step in front of the camera and actually tell the American people what's going on? Because it's starting to feel like who's even on what team at this point.
Right. Robert, I'm having a really hard time hearing you. Thoughts on political theater, Congressman Pocan?
Yeah, I couldn't quite hear either. I think we need to do a lot of resistance, period, starting next week. I mean, Monday, what I'm doing is it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I'm going to be in my district now at the inauguration, and I'm going to be meeting with people from the LGBT community who are going to be under attack. I'm meeting with the immigrant community who could be deported and under attack. I'm meeting with postal workers because there's been talk by Trump of privatizing the postal service, and I'm meeting, actually delivering Meals on Wheels to meet with low-income seniors to talk about what could happen if they decide to change or hurt Social Security or Medicare. So I think, my job that day is to try to raise the profile of some of the folks that are going to be potentially under attack, and I hope that more people are doing that instead of showing up and just clapping like a seal for Donald Trump.
Yeah, Michelle Obama has said she's not going to show up. I think it's time to just abandon any pretense of civility toward this uncivil man, but that's just me. We just have 15 seconds. Any thoughts for people to carry into the next few weeks?
Just, a lot is going to happen next week on these executive orders, and what they're going to hope is we don't notice all the bad ones while we focus on a couple. Just be prepared to have on your speed dial the number of your members of Congress, the number you give out all the time. Tom, thank you for that. Now is more than ever, be active.
There you go. 202-224-3121 is that number that Congressman Pocan is talking about. Congressman, thanks so much for dropping by today. It's always so great having you on the program.
Yeah, same here, Tom. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll be back on the other side of this break. How doctors are pushing medical credit cards with 26% interest rates, and the FTC report on big pharmaceutical middlemen, and a federal judge has blocked the FDA on cigarettes. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
Today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club, we're featuring The Inner Level by Richard Wilkinson and Kate Pickett. It's a new book. The subtitle is How More Equal Societies Reduce Stress, Restore Sanity, and Improve Everyone's Well-Being. This is in Chapter 6, The Misconception of Meritocracy, page 161. Boris Johnson, the former mayor of London who became Foreign Secretary in Theresa May's Conservative government in 2016, was educated at Eton and Oxford. Giving the Margaret Thatcher lecture to a think tank in 2013, he articulated the view that economic equality will never be possible because some people are simply too stupid to catch up with the rest of society. Quote, whatever you may think of the value of IQ tests, it is surely relevant to a conversation about equality that as many as 16% of our species have an IQ below 85, he said. Comparing society to a box of cornflakes, he praised inequality for creating the conditions under which the brightest triumph. Quote, the harder you shake the pack, the easier it will be for some cornflakes to get to the top, end quote. Inequality, quote, is essential for the spirit of envy and keeping up with the Joneses that is, like greed, a valuable spur to economic activity. Whether or not Johnson is quite as clever a cornflake as he presumably likes to think, he certainly is not in command of the facts. Nobel Prize-winning economists, as well as the OECD and IMF, have shown how inequality, far from spurring on economic growth, leads to stagnation and instability. Social mobility is reduced where income inequality is greatest, and far from inspiring innovation, it turns out that there are actually slightly more patents granted per head of population in more equal countries. And as we've seen in the previous chapters, there's also the undeniable human cost of our fixation with keeping up with the Joneses. But Boris is far from alone in his misconceptions about the relationships between inequality and ability. The idea that people are naturally endowed with differences in ability, intelligence, or talent, and that those differences then determine how far up the social ladder they reach, is a powerful popular justification for social hierarchy. The presumption is that we live in a meritocracy. Status is ability. We think of society as shaped like a pyramid. The supposition is that most people are near the bottom or only a little above it because the bulk of the population lack the special talents that we imagine people need to get to the top. The belief that differences in ability are the main influence on where people end up on the social ladder is so strong that we tend to judge everyone's personal worth, ability, and intelligence by their position in society. Nor is this confined simply to how we judge others. It also affects how people see themselves. Those at the top often believe that they're there because they are naturally endowed with plenty of the right stuff, just as many of those near the bottom think that their low status reflects a lack of ability. That picture, however, is not supported by the latest scientific evidence. First, research now shows that a very major part of what happens to people and where they end up is the result of totally unpredictable influences and occurrences amounting to pure luck. Second, aside from luck, the most important links that exist between ability and status operate in the opposite direction of that imagined by most people. Rather than different endowments of talents determining position in the hierarchy, it's much nearer the truth to say that position in the hierarchy determines abilities, interests, and talents. But let's address luck first. Whether or not we consider ourselves successful, most of us can probably look back across our own life histories and recognize the roles that luck and chance have played in getting us to where we are. We're perhaps lucky with schools or teachers, with the questions on an important exam, with some nameless person dealing with university applications, or we got on well with an interviewer when applying for a job. Perhaps a chance meeting was important, or perhaps an opportunity for promotion came up unexpectedly. Finding a life partner is just as important for our quality of life as our career or income, but we are far happier to acknowledge that chance and luck played a key role in meeting that person than we are in acknowledging luck's role in our career. No one minds mentioning the chance meeting, the circumstances that put you both at ease with each other, or the shared interest that might easily have gone unrecognized. The role of chance makes people's lives highly, although there are huge social class biases in social mobility, there are at the same time vast numbers of people moving up or down the social ladder in ways that even the most detailed analysis of parenting and ability fail to predict. Similarly, although there are differences of perhaps 10 years in the average life expectancy of upper and lower social classes, that explains very little of the individual differences in how long people live. Inevitably, some rich people will die young and some people will live age. And as some public health mavericks used to say, even if you exercised, ate healthy, and didn't smoke, you're most likely call heart disease. In addition to all this, there may be a large element of chance in whatever our experiences, including subjective experiences, trigger the kind of epigenetic changes affecting subsequent development that we discussed in the last chapter.
Just as the development of weather systems is sometimes said to be so chaotic it can be changed by the flapping of a butterfly's wings, so what amounts to chance events at the social or the cellular level are now thought to play a very substantial part in our lives. So much so that scientists have worried that if random chance and luck are such important determinants of whether or not an individual becomes sick, results, or has a good marriage, it becomes difficult to understand causal pathways at all and to do anything about preventing or remedying bad outcomes. The book, The Inner Level by Wilkinson and Pickett.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the third hour of our program. Some just astonishing news here. This David Zhao was a guy who was just, an average guy who went to visit his dentist. And he's laying back in the dentist chair. He's got a mouth. He's getting a treatment. And as Zhao recalls, this is from Time magazine, by the way, an assistant came over with a clipboard and a document for him to initial. He normally would have read each page closely, but he had a fluoride tray in his mouth and he was kind of stressed out. And so he says 3 weeks later, he got a bill from Synchrony Bank, which owns Care Credit, the largest medical credit card company in the U.S. Now, I didn't even know there was a medical credit card industry. Turns out it's a multi-billion. And what this guy had signed up for without realizing it was a credit card that immediately paid his dentist and then hit him with a bill that if he doesn't pay it off within a certain relatively short period of time, he gets charged 26.9% interest, 27% interest. Care Credit has 270,000 doctors and dentists who are pushing on their customers, up from 177,000 participating providers a decade ago. Revenue for the medical patient financing industry was $15.3 billion in 2023, according to a research firm, Ibis World, which found that as healthcare becomes less affordable due to rising premiums and insurance gaps, more patients are turning to medical loans or installment plans. You know, we're the only developed democracy in the world where people even go into debt, because much less have to take out a 27% credit card that's being hustled to them by 270,000 physicians and dentists. There's another. This is Sonia Romero. She's a nursing home worker from Los Angeles. She went to House Dental in Southgate, California in September 2021 to see about replacing some missing teeth. The dentist asked her to sign some forms to determine her eligibility for payment, for a payment plan. But he never mentioned Synchrony or Care Credit, according to Time magazine. Romero says she signed the forms, but ultimately decided not to have the procedure done. So no charge, right? Well, wrong. She receives a bill from Care Credit for $3,437. She didn't get any dental work done, and so she didn't pay the bill. And so now she's got Cavalry SPV LLC, a debt buyer, harassing her, saying that she owes $4,231.82. In other words, the original amount plus interest. And she's going to challenge it in court, but, hey. Care Credit, by the way, is the largest of these medical debt or medical credit card companies. They earned $956 million from interest and fees on loans in the third quarter of last year. Just in $956 million. A 13% increase from a year ago. This is an industry crying out for regulation, but more importantly, America should not be the only country in the world that does not say that healthcare is a right, but that instead asserts healthcare is merely a privilege. Healthcare should be a right. It should be a part of the commons, like education and frankly, I think housing should be a right. But, you know, we got libertarians here, so what can you say? Meanwhile, the Federal Trade Commission yesterday just published this mind-boggling new report on these drug middlemen, these pharmacy benefit managers. They have been bought up now by the big drugstore chains. So what's going on is that the pharmacy benefit managers, the middlemen, used to basically rip off everybody. So they got bought out by the drugstores, and now the drugstores are using the pharmacy benefit manager middleman role that they now control to rip us all off. And just listen to these numbers. I mean, this is mind-boggling. There's the three largest middlemen: CVS Health's Caremark RX, Cigna Group's Express Scripts, and United Health Group's Optum RX. Right? Are the three biggest. These three companies. 63% were reimbursed at rates marked up by more than 100% over their estimated cost. In other words, they're marking up drugs by at least 100%. 22% of these drugs were marked up by more than 1,000%. 1,000%. For the pulmonary hypertension drug tadalafil, which is it's one, I believe it's one of these ARM drugs, these anti-blood pressure drugs. Adcirca is the generic name, I guess, or the brand name rather. Pharmacies. Now we're talking the generic version. Pharmacies purchased the drug for an average of $27 in 2022. Now I don't know if that's for 100 pills or what, but $27. And the three big PBMs that I just shared with you marked up the drug by $2,079. That's a staggering average markup of 7,736%. So it's not just the drug companies that are ripping us all off. Now it's these retail pharmacies that own these middlemen. Now it's CVS and Cigna and United Health and the retail pharmacies associated with them. Again, this is from the FTC's report. It says, quote, such significant markups allowed the big three PBMs and their affiliated specialty pharmacies to generate more than $7.3 billion in revenue from dispensing drugs in excess of the drug's estimated acquisition costs between 2017 and 2022. $7.3 billion in markups. In markups. All, and again, back to the quote, all while patient, employer, and other health care plan sponsored payments for drugs steadily increased annually. We're being robbed. And Republicans are just fine with this, by the way. They love this. Because, you know, when these big companies make billions of dollars ripping us all off, what do they do with a small fraction of that money? They give it to Republican members of Congress. And a few Democrats, you know, the on-the-take Democrats, you know, they kind of advertise the fact that they're on the take. They call themselves problem solvers. Yeah. And finally, the the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, which by congressional authority can have a say over tobacco advertising and tobacco packaging, wants tobacco companies to put new graphic warnings, including depictions of how smoking can cause bladder cancer, head and neck cancer, fatal lung disease, stunted fetal growth during pregnancy, cataracts, and type 2 diabetes. And a Trump-appointed judge, Mr. Barker, U.S. District Judge J. Campbell Barker in Tyler, Texas on Monday said that the FDA went beyond their authority. Now, there was a similar case back in 2022 by Judge Barker, same guy. Tobacco companies are apparently, you know, they went to Judge Barker and he said, nope, FDA can't do this. This was 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. And the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, it's based out of New Orleans, overturned that. And the tobacco companies appealed that to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, we're not going to hear the appeal.
We're going to let it stand that it's overturned. In other words, the judge lost. The tobacco companies lost. The FDA won. But now they're doing it all over again. They're just starting the process literally all over again. And, you know, they'll be taking it to a slightly different Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and a slightly different Supreme Court. And we'll, you know, they're just figuring, hey, maybe we can make this work. Incredible. Incredible. So what's on your mind? I'll pick up your calls on the other side of the break. It's 15 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, your media support group for We the People. Stay with us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So what's up? What's on your mind? I'll pick up your calls right after this. And welcome back. George in Norfolk, Virginia. Hey, George, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how you doing, Tom?
Good. What's up?
Well, listening to what you just said, and in the whole realm of healing and healthcare, you know, you could spend a whole 3-hour show just on the, and you may have at some point when allopathic medicine took over from more natural medical help. And it just became treating symptoms, and it becomes whack-a-mole, and their method of treating them is some sort of money-making drug, whether it be an antibiotic, a steroid, or what have you. But if you present yourself with symptoms, which I know millions of people are doing, that have been exposed to mold or other things, Lyme disease, that they don't have something they can press on that computer and spit out a steroid or antibiotic, and they may try to give you one anyway for it, but it's going to make it worse.
Well, you can treat Lyme disease with antibiotics. I know people who've done
it can help
successfully.
Temporarily.
No, it kills off the spirochete that is the pathogen.
Well, some right away, but a lot of times once it's had a time to set in, people will get better temporarily, and then the symptoms come back.
That's because the spirochete, this little kind of pseudo insect, you know, basically is laying eggs deep inside your joints in places that are not heavily vascularized. So it takes a long time for the drugs to get in there. George, I'm not the world's biggest advocate of allopathic medicine. I'm a big fan of herbal treatments and whatnot, but you know, I don't think we should be throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. I mean, there are a lot of drugs that actually do good.
No, I'm not saying it's 100% wrong, but when, you know, you're saying basically we've got a system set up where people rely on these medicines, and they have to go
save a lot of lives.
And they cost money. And
let's make it affordable.
Exactly. And so, you know, but as you talked about earlier with the Congressman, they keep so much distraction going out there. It's so hard for them to even, you know, we're celebrating the success of maybe getting diabetes medicine cheaper, but we don't even get down to it. Like, there's so many people diabetic, and let's work on that.
Well, type 1 diabetes is caused by a viral infection of the pancreas early in life. I mean, that's fairly well established, I believe, and you've got to take insulin, you know, on an ongoing basis. So again, this is not a mystery. You know, and the guy who developed insulin, what was it, Fleming, wasn't it? Who developed insulin? I mean, they basically it's just crazy that these companies are charging an arm and a leg for something that literally saves lives.
Yeah, but most diabetes comes on as people just consume more and more sugar.
Well, you're talking type 2
diabetes.
That's a different thing. Yeah. And often that doesn't require insulin, but you know, the genuinely insulin-dependent diabetes is serious.
There you go.
George, I got to run. Thanks for the call. It's 20 minutes past the hour.
will be in a second. I'll be right back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay tuned. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out. Welcome back. 21 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Ann in Trinity, Florida. Hey, Ann, what's up? Thanks for listening to WMNF.
Hey, Tom. Thank you very much. I was calling today because we are having calls for unity and that we need to understand the Trump voters. It's going to thing, so we've got to, all come together. And I've given thought to that for 10 years now, as Trump came down that golden escalator with either paid people to be there waving signs or his employees.
They paid people $50 each to stand there and
to wave those signs.
Yeah.
Very good use of perception there.
Yep.
He's got that. He knows it well.
Oh, NBC trained him well.
Yes. But I've decided that the dilemma of, unity, and I've decided that if I were alive in the 30s and the 40s, I would not have been friends with fascist Nazis and their sympathizers. And that hasn't changed today. Their viewpoints are the same. They're against immigrants. They make diversity, equality, and inclusion bad words. They want to throw out our democracy like bathwater, Norquist's wet dream, and apparently Mike Lee's. They're just not people that I want to be friends with or hang out with. I agree. You were talking earlier. We do want to be collegial, and we need to stop. If Hitler were sitting next to Obama, would he have laughed with him? Trump's own generals, 4-star generals, used the term fascist, and lightly they don't just throw it around randomly.
Yeah.
And so it makes me angry when I see, that we do just kind of we want to be collegial and we let things slide. By
I think
our
Obama was just trying
that.
to be polite. I mean, he was trapped in one of those situations like when you sit down next to someone on an airplane and they just want to talk.
Yeah, I just kind of feel like if Hitler were sitting next to him, though, I'm pretty sure he would have just kind of kept his head turned to the right.
Yeah,
and just have never turned to the left.
I get the critique, but I think we have bigger fish to fry right now, Ann.
But yes, I do get that we do need to be considered and things like that. But there has to be a line. I think that if the Confederates were considered traitors, we treat the rebel flag like the swastika, and we should have, because they denote the same exact thing.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
We try to be the better person and let things slide, and we have to stop.
Yeah, and we should have started in the 1870s. I completely agree. And thank you very much. Annette in Baltimore. Hey, Annette, what's up? Annette, watching us on Free Speech TV in Baltimore?
Yes.
Hi, you're on the air.
Hi, Happy New Year.
Thank you, back at you.
All right. Lord, I had to write it down because you mentioned a lot of things that was interesting. But anyway, I need advice. I'll be 64 this year, and I know it. What is it? 65. You go to, is it Medicare?
Yeah, Medicare, yes.
Medicare.
Yeah.
I have TRICARE. Is there a way I can keep my TRICARE? When I talked to TRICARE, they said, I had to sign up for A and B.
Right.
Is that true? Like
yes.
I said, I don't know.
Yeah, you do. When you turn 65, and you can do it months before you turn 65. In fact, I encourage you to do so. Just make an appointment. Medicare.gov, you can go to their website. Make an appointment with your local Medicare office. You're in Baltimore. There's definitely an office in Baltimore. I went in Louise and I went in person. I think but we turned 65 before the pandemic. I think since the pandemic, they've been doing things, more that are more telephone friendly.
Right.
But you just want to hook up with the Medicare people and be very careful, because that government website, that Medicare.gov website, will also direct you to Medicare Advantage, which you want to avoid if you possibly can, if you can afford to avoid it.
Right. I heard your warnings about that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, if I was born in 61, what is my retirement age?
Well, on Social Security, it has been pushed back. I don't know what the years are. I'm sorry.
Right, because I know they changed it for depending on what year you were born in. That's why I don't know no more.
Yeah, it's 67. I don't either. It's 67 now, and that took effect last year, even though that change was made by Reagan back in 83.
Right, but that's if you were born in a certain year.
That's
then
correct.
The 67 applies to you.
You should be able to look that up, Anna.
I can Google that.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
And
I don't believe any Democrat should be honoring any norms.
Yeah, I'm with you. I salute Michelle Obama for not showing up to sit next to Donald Trump and not showing up for his inaugural. God bless her. Annette, thank you for the call. It's brave women like Michelle Obama who are, I think, going to be our guides in these next 4 years. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with your calls on the other side of this break. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, the True People's Media.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Stokely, A Life by Peniel E. Joseph. This is from the preface. Michael is a troubling icon of America's civil rights years. His Black Power call became a national Rorschach test. Whereas many blacks viewed it as righteous, many whites saw violent foreboding. Newspapers brooded over Carmichael's words, quickly forming a consensus that judged the slogan to be at best intemperate and at worst a blatant call for anti-white violence and reverse racism. In 1966, Black Power reverberated around the world, galvanizing blacks, outraging whites, and inspiring a cross-section of ethnic and racial minorities. In 1969, Carmichael left the United States for Conakry, Guinea, where he reinvented himself as a roving Pan-Africanist organizer and professional revolutionary. For the next 30 years, he was a dissident, a throwback to the heady years of the 1960s. Carmichael turned the quest for black political power into his life's work. His faith in a style of politics many considered anachronistic came out of the same tenacity and stubbornness that once made him one of the most effective and controversial activists of his generation. These same qualities, however, limited Carmichael's efforts as a Pan-Africanist political mobilizer. Before leaving America, Stokely resigned as Black Power's glamorous enfant terrible. Telegenic, brash, equal parts angry and gregarious. Whether dressed in three-piece suits, leather jackets, sharecroppers' overhauls, or African dashikis, Carmichael came to represent the era's multifaceted identity, a hipster hero whose easy grace allowed him to consort effortlessly with both the dignified and the damned. The name Stokely Carmichael first came into my consciousness when I was a young boy coming of age in New York City. As the proud son of a Haitian mother who belonged to local 1199 Hospital Workers Union, part of SEIU, I grew up hearing stories of how civil rights activists, Black Power revolutionaries, Pan-Africanist freedom fighters, and trade unionists helped to shape a new world in America and beyond. By the time I was in elementary school, I was on my first picket line, accompanying my mother in support of an 1199 strike. Both Malcolm X and Martin Luther King supported 1199 during the 1960s. Stokely Carmichael's political importance came into sharper focus when I was in junior high after the premiere of the landmark PBS documentary series Eyes, which featured the 24-year-old Carmichael's Black Power speech and rightly characterized Stokely as his generation's heir to Malcolm X. Over the course of a decade, Carmichael, I would come to understand him as that and much more. Carmichael's youth, casual dress, and charisma made him an easily identifiable hero, one whose quick smile and passionate speeches left an indelible impression. An adopted son of the South by way of Trinidad, the Bronx, and Harlem, Stokely adapted to while transforming whatever environment he encountered. As a native New Yorker growing up in the city's tense racial climate of the 1980s, I found Carmichael's survival instincts appealing. As a young graduate student in Philadelphia, I had the opportunity to hear him speak and briefly met him afterward. He encouraged me to stay committed to the Black freedom movement, a struggle he defined as infinite. With his flowing African robes, gray hair, and white beard, he looked like a prince. And he had changed his name. He was no longer Stokely Carmichael. As Malcolm Little had become Malcolm X and later El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, Stokely had become Kwame Ture. It was a name that paid homage to his two African heroes, men who had been the first presidents of their countries, Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah and Guinea's Sekou Touré. Kwame Ture spelled the Guinean's name not as the French did, as white Europeans did, but as Arabs and Muslims did. Sekou Touré, S-E-K-U-T-U-R-E. As a college student, Carmichael helped transform America by organizing sit-ins, demonstrations, and voter registrations during the civil rights movement's heroic years, a period that roughly encompasses the decade between the 1954 Brown v. Board Supreme Court decision, desegregation decision, and the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and has become enshrined in public memory through national holidays, films, commemorations, and monuments. Carmichael's deep sense of justice contributed to his evolution into Kwame Ture, the Pan-Africanist revolutionary and anti-capitalist organizer who moved to West Africa and remained tenacious in the face of searing political setbacks. Carmichael ultimately judged America incapable of creating the free and just world he had struggled for as a young man. But despite living in Africa for the final 30 years of his life, Carmichael's legendary stature as a Black Power activist lingered even if many ignored his lasting contributions to civil rights struggles that included a bruising quest for the vote in the Deep South. Although today, Stokely Carmichael remains one of the protean figures of the 20th century, a revolutionary who passionately believed in self-defense and armed rebellion, even as he revered nonviolence. The book Stokely, A Life, by Peniel L. Joseph.
If you're listening to us on Pacifica, one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio and tag You're It. So a lot of people are wondering, why is it in America that we can't have nice things? Why don't we have, the same things every other democracy has? Every other democracy in the world has a national health care system of some form, and everybody is covered. We don't. We've got 27 million uninsured people and over 100 million underinsured people. Why is that? Why is it that every other country in the world offers college education very inexpensively, if not for free, and for here you go to debt? Why is it that we've got our public schools crumbling and other countries are doing well? Why is it that we've got Medicare being taken apart by this Medicare Advantage scam and nobody will do anything about it? Well, it turns out the reason why it boils down to one thing, one Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, legalizing the bribery of our politicians. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. I think you're going to find it very, very useful. Check it out. Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Tim in Rohnert Park, California. Hey, Tim, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. I absolutely adore your program.
Thank you.
I'm calling because it kind of blows my mind. I can't believe that the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment has not been handled yet.
I agree.
And I understand that Joe Biden could enforce it just by publishing it in the National Archives.
That's my understanding also. Yes.
Which is an agency of the executive branch.
Correct. And
this is so right now the rights of women are legislated, not protected. And this has been, they introduced it to Congress over 100 years ago. And
well, and that's the problem, Tim. The minute that he publishes it, there will be a lawsuit to the Supreme Court to try to basically unpublish it. And odds are the court will go along with that. The argument that they're making is that the amendments to the Constitution have to be ratified within a certain time window, and that this particular amendment, the ERA, took longer than that time window, and therefore the earlier ratifications don't count, and so it's still short of the number. My guess is, in fact, my bet would be, I would bet money that the Supreme Court would overturn, Biden putting it in the Federal Register. But I still think he should.
Isn't it the right thing? Yeah, isn't it the right thing to do? Yeah.
Yep, I still think he should do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Tom, for everything you do.
Yep, thank you, Tim. Good talking to you. Appreciate the call. Patty in Fort Collins, Colorado. Hey, Patty, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. Listen, I wanted to remind people
Patty, your phone is falling apart here.
Oh dear.
I'm sorry, Patty. I'm going to put you on hold here if you can hear me. Your phone is fading in and out. It sounds like a VoIP phone on a bad internet line. Mateo, she's on line 4 if you want to pick that up and figure out what's going on. Mona, in Asheville, North Carolina, or is it Mona? It's Mona, right?
Mona.
Yeah. Hey, what's up?
Well, you were talking about Care Credit earlier. I actually just used it right before you started talking about it. They've got you over a barrel because I use it at the veterinarians and at my dentist. And my husband and I are like paycheck to paycheck people, supposed to be retired but can't afford to retire. And so, you get a toothache or you put off the dentist just so long, and they won't set up payment plans anymore like they used to.
Right. No, they just sell you, they just get you to sign up for the credit card.
Yeah, absolutely. And so years ago, we had used it, and actually we had this years and years ago had to file bankruptcy, and Care Credit was one of them we did. So what I do now, like I just had my dog at the vet, she had to go. She's been sick, and I don't have the disposable cash. My daughter shares it with me. In fact, she's in Portland, Oregon. And, so, then I pay her back. So that helps. But one thing that every place they've got contracts with, like these different doctors, dentists, that use it, they'll lure you in with zero interest. And then, but each place is different. So it might be zero interest for 6 months. It might be 30 days. It might be a year.
Oh, really?
And if you miss that deadline, that's when they zap you with the ridiculous interest.
Right.
So you really need to pay attention, people that use it too. Like my daughter will pay it right away and not risk it. But yeah, that's how we got in trouble with it. Because not every place will tell you, it's like, oh, well, you got to have this paid off in 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the only other thing I called about is why on earth are people so afraid of that fat man coming into office they're just. We watched. Is it Joni Ernst this morning?
Yeah.
And just totally turning around. Why are they this man?
He has considerable political power, and he will soon control the military and the prosecutorial apparatus of the United States government. He is not someone that you can take lightly. And in the Republican Party, he has seized complete control of the GOP. I mean, they've completely surrendered to him, much like the conservatives did to Hitler in 34, in 33 rather. I mean, we've seen this movie before.
Yeah, I like your take on it. I listen to you most days, you and Michael Signorelli. But I mean, it just disgusts me, and it makes you nervous. But I'm going to take you guys' advice and keep calling our representatives.
Good.
And not go by the wayside. I'm with the North Carolina Dems here, so
great.
As much as you hate to, we'd like a little reprieve, but I don't think we can.
Yeah. Well, Mona, good on you, and thanks for the information on the credit card or the medical credit stuff.
Okay.
That's crazy. Thank you so much.
Jen.
Good,
Well,
good to hear from you.
Thank you, Tom.
Sure enough.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yep. Leslie. Hey, Leslie, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. Back at you.
Thank you. Thank you. So that's so funny. I just had this experience with Care Credit this week. I have two very quick stories. So, yes, my son came back from holiday break, or just before the holiday, had to go in for an emergency on his tooth. Wasn't infected, but he needs his wisdom teeth out. This Friday, he gets his wisdom teeth out. I call the dentist this week to find out how much it will be, how much insurance will cover. So not only does insurance not cover all of it, but we need to pay up front, and then insurance will reimburse us. And I said, well, do you take payment plans? And they said, we have Care Credit. And they don't do payment plans. It's Care Credit. You put all of it on the Care Credit. We would pay off then what I guess the insurance will pay, but you only have 12 months to pay it off.
Before the interest starts?
$3,900. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's $3,900, which we have, but not for teeth right at the moment.
Yeah.
But it's not like it's not. He has to get them out, or he'll get infections. I mean, it'll impact his health.
Been there, done that. Yeah, myself and my kids.
Right. So they put you over. Right, the wonderful world of having kids, and they put you over a barrel. Last year, because I have a TBI, I've had a lot of tests. So my local hospital, I had an MRI there. I called to make payment arrangements, as I had always done. And the local health system said, if you can't pay this off in 6 months, you have to take out a loan. And they push you towards a local credit union to take a loan out to pay it off.
Which is probably a better option than these high-interest credit cards.
Very true. But basically your choices are, you don't pay it, and you will
or you go in debt.
Get.
This is nuts.
Go into debt,
healthcare should be a right
up,
as a human being and as a citizen.
Absolutely. And I'm like, well, I don't have, $4,000 on me, but, I paid it, but it was just getting a loan, forcing people to get, and then they're under no obligation to give you that loan. And then where are you?
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, just since that happened to me this week, I wanted to tell you those stories.
Well, thank you, Leslie. The stories are piling up here. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Aren't they? They're crazy.
Indeed.
It's a scam.
Yep. Thank you, Leslie.
Take care.
Yep. Lee in Orlando, Florida. Hey, Lee, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm getting here, Lee. What's on your mind?
Well, same here. And I just reached what they call the FRA, the retirement age. I don't have to worry about my income. I can keep working. And they asked me about Medicare, and I know I listen to you all the time, and I know you talk about it all the time, but I wasn't there, so I kind of half listened. So I'm asking, what is your advice to me about signing up for Medicare?
Sure. You just turned 65. Is that the deal, Lee?
No, actually, I'm a little bit older. I just reached the age, or whatever they call it, that way I was holding off.
67?
I'm still working.
Yeah.
Well, 66 in 8 months.
66, okay. I'm pretty sure that when you turn 65, you have to sign up for Medicare, and if you don't, you get penalized. So, I could be wrong on that, but I don't think I am. I'm no expert on this, although I did write a book about our healthcare system. But the thing you need to do right away, Lee, is call your local Medicare office. You've got one there in Orlando, and make an appointment to come in and talk to somebody or get somebody on the phone and ask them those questions, and just be very, very clear with them that you want real Medicare, not Medicare Advantage, if you can afford it. I realize that there are some people who can't, but
yeah. Well, when I signed up, and I just registered for Social Security a couple of weeks ago, the young lady on the phone signed me up for the basic Medicare.
Parts A and B?
No, I think it's just the very basic Medicare.
Right.
Because I was unsure of what to do.
That's Parts A and B is basic Medicare. And one covers hospitals, the other covers doctors and drugs and stuff. And then, there is a 20% hole in one of those two. And so you need to pick up an insurance plan from a regular insurance company to fill in that hole. And there's a lot of competition in that marketplace. Those are called Medigap plans because they fill in that 20% gap, and or Medicare supplement plans. They're also called that. But be very careful, because the people who sell them also sell Medicare Advantage, and very often they will try to talk you into Medicare Advantage instead of a Medigap plan because it's far more profitable for them. So, but Lee, talk to the Medicare people.
One last quick question. I'm also a veteran, and I get VA medicine, Medicare.
Right. Like TRICARE you're talking about. Yeah, you need to talk to the VA about that. I don't know anything, very little about that, Lee. I'm sorry. But I know that I still have to sign up for Medicare. Lee, good luck. Thanks for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
President Biden just announced that the Gaza ceasefire and hostage deal, which is going to include releasing American hostages from Gaza, is going to take effect on Sunday. So stay tuned. And welcome back. Jan in Etna Green, Indiana. Hey, Jan, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Well, Tom, my house would be a lot cleaner if it wasn't for you, because I have to watch your program every day.
Okay. Thank you.
But anyway, the young man you just talked to that's getting ready to sign up for Medicare and answered my first subject I wanted to talk with you about. But as I was searching for a new Medicare policy, Medicare Advantage policy, I talked to a young man that sold me a policy that will keep me out of the nursing home for at least 60 days. And the reason that I brought that up was because in your first hour, you had mentioned in your rundown of things that the GOP want to cut in half, and one of them included cutting staffing in nursing homes.
Right, and Medicaid, which pays for it.
Yes. Well, I have had the unpleasant experience of spending a month in a nursing home, and they are so short-staffed, and if they cut that in half, a lot of people are going to die. So anyways, back to my main point. As I was talking to my new agent, he suggested a policy that, like I said, will keep me in my house, and this will cost me it's just about $100 a month. But when I was in the nursing home, United Healthcare picked up the first 10 days, I believe it was, and then I was responsible for the next 10 days, and then Medicare picked up the next 10. So anyways, that cost me over $2,000, that 10 days. And while I was there, I was told of a patient that had a bed sore that had gotten clear into the bone.
Oh, my God.
And so with this sort of cuts to staffing, people are going to die.
Yeah, I agree, Jan. I agree.
And maybe that's intentional because to them we're a burden on society.
I doubt that Republicans are thinking like that, although there may be a few psychopaths, but I think mostly they're just thinking about the massive campaign contributions they're going to get from the big insurance companies who run these Medicare Advantage scams, and and the nursing home operators and whatnot. I mean, it's a major $1 trillion for-profit industry. I mean, so it shouldn't surprise us when they take advantage of us and when they buy politicians.
Oh, I'm not surprised at all. Only I would push back a little bit about the intentional part. I do believe it was intentional.
Yeah. That useless eaters. Yeah, I've heard the phrase. I mean, libertarians are fond of it, but I get it. Jan, thank you for calling and sharing your experience. I wish you the very best. Yeah,
nice talking to you.
Okay, good talking to you too, Jan. Thank you. It's 10 minutes. Well, now it's 9 minutes before the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in 60 seconds. Stay with us.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. You know, between 40 years of Ronald Reagan's neoliberalism destroying the American middle class and all the just horrors of January 6th and the Trump presidency, America's waking up, and that's a really good thing. There's actually, some books coming out about this. Mine, The Hidden History of Democracy. Neil Howe's The Fourth Turning is here. And it looks like a moment of American renaissance is upon us, if our media doesn't screw it up, which raises the question, can we have democracy and Fox News? Can the two coexist? Like, when Fox News runs chyrons saying that essentially Joe Biden is a wannabe dictator who's throwing Trump in jail because he's his political opponent. There's a whole rant about this and an in-depth analysis of what can we do with regard to repairing our media here in the United States over at HartmannReport.com. I think you'll find it interesting. Check it out.
It starts with a whisper, it starts with a call. One voice rising can speak for us all. When we stand together, there's nothing we can't do. The strength of a union begins with you.
52 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Bill in San Diego. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Hey, Tom, I'd like to push back a little bit on the care credit. I found that it's been very helpful for me when I need an emergency root canal. The dentist office was very good at saying, okay, you can't pay for it now. Would you like to pay for it over 12 months or 24 months? It's an interest-free loan.
Initially.
Anybody that doesn't
initially.
Well, yeah. If you don't pay your bills, then yes, you have to.
Yeah, I'm not saying this is an industry that shouldn't exist. What I am saying, my complaint is not with them specifically. I mean, they're filling a market niche that needs to be filled.
Yeah.
My complaint is that anybody needs to borrow money for medical expenses in America.
Absolutely, you're totally right there. I agree with you. And everybody has emergency dental or pet stuff. And here's an opportunity to do that. Yeah. I also had a high interest.
If I could also, Bill, I would also suggest that people who are thinking about doing this should also talk to their credit union or their local bank if they've got a local bank, because even though you're going to have to pay interest from day one, if you're not sure that you're going to be able to pay this off within the period, and in some cases it's 60 days, in some cases it's 12 months, whatever it may be. Then go with a low interest or a lower interest loan anyway.
Lower the better.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Okay,
all right.
Bill, thanks a lot. Yeah, Meade in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Meade, what's on your mind today?
Hello. Yeah,
Yeah, I talked to you once before, and I brought up the thing about propaganda, and you said that's a negative thing, and I'm thinking it's very woke to not use that word. They should claim it and use it a lot. I heard, I think Martha McSally talk about all the deep state info is propaganda. I think propaganda, instead of the word lies, like there's specific points. And I think
are you arguing that the word propaganda should be or should not be a pejorative?
Yeah, should be.
It should be considered a negative word. I agree with that.
Well, yeah, and use it for the lies.
Sure.
Instead of the word lies, which is really common, but propaganda.
Yeah, that's
also,
I don't object
black
to that.
shirts, brown shirts, you'd call them red hats. Just call them red hats.
There you go. Yep. I like that. I like that. That's a great appellation. Thank you very much, Meade. Terry in Bellevue, Washington. Hey, Terry, what's up?
Hi. Good morning, Tom. I have a question. Since the Supreme Court ruled Trump has immunity, does that mean that he cannot be impeached again?
No. Does not mean that he cannot be impeached. He can still be impeached. It would just, it would take Democrats controlling the House and Senate because Republicans will never do it.
Got it. All right. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Good talking to you. Thank you very much. Let's see. How much time do we have? Oh, I've got 15 seconds, so it wouldn't be fair to anybody to put them on the air and blow up their full minute. I think it's really important that we pay attention to what's going on with these appointments. We had 3 of these hearings this morning all at the same time. My concern is that so many people are just going to be kind of in overwhelm and they're going to tune out. Please don't tune out. Pay attention to what's going on. And in particular, next Monday, after Trump gets sworn in, he's probably going to drop 100 executive orders. And we really need to be paying attention then. Write down the phone number of Congress, 202-224-3121. Put it on your refrigerator and get ready to call your members of Congress, even if they're Republican, especially if they're Republican. Thanks for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Sport that requires all of us. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe, be good to yourself and the people around you, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!